Good evening, everyone. It is 7 p.m. and time to call the Monday, June 6th, 2022 Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission meeting to order. Will staff please confirm the presence of a quorum?
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Deck? Mr. Horke?
Here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Maui? Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz? And Ms. Bulgaric?
Here.
Oh, we have a visual on Mr. Schmitz, but not audio. He's muted, but he is here. The record will reflect that he is present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item first, as usual, is approval of the minutes of a previous meeting. We have minutes for the May 16th, 2022 meeting. Is there any question or comment? If not, do we have a motion to approve these minutes?
Motion to approve the May 16th, 2022 APC meeting minutes as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Kelleher, seconded by Victor McCarty. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Can you do that again?
Yes.
Thank you. And Ms. Bulgaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is the review of our rules and procedures for tonight's agenda item. We have hit the trifecta. We have all the options tonight, consent agenda items for approval or recommendations, and some public hearings.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. As mentioned, we have both public hearing items and non-public hearing items, so I'll go through the rules and procedures for both. For the public hearing items this evening, the department will summarize the petition. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. The president will open up a public hearing, and individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. Those representing a group will be given 5 minutes to speak. Only one member of the group will be given 5 minutes to speak. And for efficiency purposes, we ask that those representing a group please speak first. Public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard, and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to the Plan Commission members. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments, and the Plan Commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. For our non-public hearing items this evening, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also describe what action is to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present, and the Plan Commission will then act upon the petition. For our rules of conduct this evening, we ask that you please not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you have to have a private discussion, we ask that you please quietly exit the room. We also ask that you please silence your devices at this time, and if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you're attending the meeting in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition that is scheduled for a public hearing, please fill out a yellow card. There are cards available in the back of the room this evening, and please bring them up to us prior to the presentation of that petition. Those listed as representing a group will be called up first to speak. During comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record. And we ask that you not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed, and you will be advised when there is approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person, comments regarding the petition should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to the Plan Commission members and the petitioner during the presentation. We will finally, like to remind everybody to speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put onto the record. Also, please mute your microphone when not speaking. If you come up to the podium to speak, please ensure that the microphone is on as indicated by the green light on the base of the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Item first is approval of 5 consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve tonight's very full consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Victor McCarty. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Kristen Berkman. Will staff please call the roll?
Yeah, Ms. Berkman,
Yes.
Mr. Horkay,
Yes.
Mr. Johns,
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz.
Yes.
Video, please.
Yes.
Thank you. And Ms. Wojcik.
I need to ask a legal question. I know this is just consent agenda, but there is one that I believe that, in my opinion, is not compliant. And I know that staff has rendered its opinion, and I know that I just still feel like there's issues that make it non-compliant. So would I vote no, or vote yes, or abstain?
You wouldn't need to abstain. Procedurally, I guess we should have done them individually if there's going to be a denial or no vote on one of them. So how would you like to proceed? Do you want, she can't, if she's going to vote no to one as a group, then she's got to vote no on all of them.
I guess I would like to hear how passionately you feel. Do we need to actually redo this so that you have your opportunity to vote no?
I mean, this is important enough to me that I feel it is not what was represented to me in zoning.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing something that I don't feel is compliant with what we approved.
All right. It's a question that probably should have come up before the meeting, so we wouldn't be in a do-over situation here. So we can, if it doesn't cause any issues here, we can.
It's
You
the
already have a
Lantern
majority.
Commons detailed development plan.
Yeah.
You've got a majority already vote, so if she votes no on all of them,
It still works.
It still
That's why I
passes.
was kind of asking how passionately do you feel about wanting to vote only for this one, or are you okay if we just finish this and let's not
I understand.
do it this way again?
I'm obviously the only one that has this concern, so I will just vote no if I need to. I mean, you still have your majority, but I just can't in good conscience do that.
Okay, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
So
So it's a
officially
no.
ask for the vote no.
Yeah, we'll just make this clean. Ms. Wojcik,
No, thank you.
motion carries.
Thank you. All right, moving on. We have 2 items of business in front of us tonight. First one is 2205-PUD-10 Chatham Hills, PUD Amendment 9. This is in front of us for a recommendation to City Council. Go ahead, staff report.
Yes, good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item being presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Chatham Hills PUD. The proposed PUD amendment is related to the 21-acre real estate parcel located at 859 Chatham Ridge Boulevard. The petitioner is proposing to divide the subject property into 2 individual estate-style lots. The proposed amendment would modify the default architectural and landscaping standards associated with the subject real estate. This item was introduced at the April 11th City Council meeting. The petitioner held a neighborhood meeting on April 26th, and a public hearing was held at the May 4th Plan Commission meeting. Since that meeting, the petitioner has included additional language in the PUD amendment text that addresses design elements and exterior surfaces that are consistent with the illustrative character exhibit attached to the proposed ordinance. The proposed PUD amendment would also require the proposed development to be constructed in substantial compliance with the provided illustrative character exhibit. This item is up for a recommendation tonight. The petitioner is here tonight to present details of the project. They're available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
An attorney with Church, Hill, and Antrim. We have offices here in Westfield located at 116 North Union Street. We're here tonight for the second reading on the proposed PUD amendment to the Chatham Hills PUD to permit the construction of 2 large custom dwellings on an existing 21-acre site. We've made a few changes to section 3.1 of the PUD since the last time we were in front of you, including the modification of language regarding the design elements to be continued around the structure and the addition of permitted exterior materials for the home. This language helps support the designs contemplated by David Roush Studios, who's the architect on this project. We've also kept in the substantial compliance language in 3.1A. We've worked closely with Chatham Hills during this whole process, and they're in favor of this amendment. The proposed home designs have also been approved by the Neighborhood's Architectural Review Board. With that, we're asking for a favorable recommendation tonight and to council, so please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Plan Commissioners, do we have any questions for the petitioner or staff? Hearing none, do we have anybody who would like to make a motion on the recommendation to council?
I would like to make a motion to send a positive recommendation to City Council for Ordinance 2205-PUD-10, Chatham Hills PUD Amendment 9.
I
Thank
can
you.
second that.
We have a motion from Dr. Kelleher and a second from Kristen Berkman for a favorable recommendation. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Horke,
Yes.
Mr. Johns,
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Ms. Spiljarek,
Yes.
Ms. Berkman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item of business is 2205-ZOA-01, a Unified Development Ordinance Amendment. This also is here for recommendation to council. We have the staff report, please.
Yes, this is Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening for your discussion and potential consideration is the proposed amendment to the processes of the Unified Development Ordinance. As discussed in the staff report and at the previous meeting, the changes fall broadly into 4 categories. First category being changes to the rezoning process to accommodate a workshop meeting between the public hearing and recommendation meetings. This would apply to straight rezonings as well as new PUD districts and PUD amendments unless otherwise exempted by the Plan Commission on a case-by-case basis. The second group of changes is related to the creation of a plat committee and delegation of primary plat and overall development plan approval to that committee. The third group of changes is in regards to the overall and detailed development plan process. Currently, both processes are required for all non-single family residential projects. The updated process would require only a detailed development plan for commercial and multifamily projects and only an overall development plan for single-family projects, both attached and detached. The last group of changes are miscellaneous changes related to platting and development plan processes or relevant definitions that were included for efficiency purposes. Amendments to the zoning ordinance do follow the same process as a rezoning with a council introduction, public hearing, plan commission recommendation, and then council adoption. As we said, this item did receive a public hearing at your last meeting on May 16th and is eligible for a recommendation this evening pending plan commission discussion. I am available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Plan Commissioners, do we have any questions for Pam or other staff members or each other on this? Kristen?
I just had a couple of questions. Article 10.7 discusses that, I don't know if you want to pull it up, Kevin. It's talking about a traffic impact study. There it is. Yes, thank you. So I guess now the way I'm reading this is that the Plan Commission could request to have a traffic impact study, but we're being eliminated from this specific article, and as well as you, Kevin, and then it would just be up to the Director of Public Works. And I guess my question is that a lot of times when citizens come in and they have concerns, they talk about the traffic, and while since I've been on the commission, we haven't asked for that, I could see a potential situation where we really would like to see that data. And I just wondered why the Plan Commission was having that removed as an option.
Yes, so that section in 10.7, let me get that pulled up in the main ordinance. I believe that is the development plan review section. So that would only eliminate your approval to request a traffic impact study at the development plan phase of the process, as well as the director. The reason that we're comfortable with that and that we would prefer that is because the burden for denying a development plan for a compliant project based on traffic alone would be very high. So we feel that the Public Works Director, who is in charge of the road network, would be best qualified to determine if there's any warrant for that traffic study.
So we would have, I guess, that as an option if it was during a public hearing for a petition to ask for that.
For a zoning change.
For a
or
zoning
PUD,
change,
that
we would
is-
still have that.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That answers that one. And then the other question I had was on the section with the workshop, which of course I'm very much in favor of, but there was also the continuance had been crossed out. So I was wondering if we still have the option to continue items with that change.
Do you know which section?
Yes, I'm sorry,
what-
section 6, article 10.15. And I could be misinterpreting, so I'm just asking for clarification on that
Yeah,
one.
so you would still have the authority to ask for a continuance. We just really reordered that. The way it was written in the original UDO, I think in our mind was a little bit confusing, at least in mine. So with this, with the reordering, instead of stating what happens directly after the public hearing, it really breaks down the meetings. So a continuance could still be requested by either the petitioner or by the Plan Commission, unless I'm wrong about that. Beth, please correct me at any time.
There it is, thank you.
This
Sorry,
this really
Pam,
just-
they
just
were
kind of-
getting
No,
it up
you're
on the
fine.
screen. Sorry about
You
that.
were perfectly fine. That so really, just the order that the way it was originally laid out didn't make, like I said, a lot of sense to us. So reordering that, we did remove the continuances and I guess basically that little section G and move it down where it's not called continuances, but it discusses the Plan Commission action. So, and our attorney did review these drafts prior to and did not mention this as being a concern, but like I said, Beth, please correct me if I'm wrong, if removing that continuance section in any way affects their ability to ask for a continuance.
No, it does not. And if I recall, as quickly as I can going through the APC rules, I think it also says in your APC rules that you're authorized to seek a continuance, but I'm brushing through those quickly.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't crossing something out that we may want to do. Even with the workshop, I could see us still wanting the ability to do that. So that's just what I'm double checking.
Yeah, so there will be an amendment to the rules of procedure that will come subsequent to this. And that's a place where we can address that, and that's probably where it should be, frankly. If it's not already in there, and it doesn't look like we currently address that. So that's something we can make sure is included in the rules of procedure amendment that comes at your next meeting or in 2 meetings.
Yeah, state law only requires that you outline what your process is in your rules. It doesn't have to actually be in your ordinance. It just has to be in your rules, so we can make sure that that's identified specifically in your rules.
Which has been anticipated all along, that there are concurrent things going on here to update the rules procedures, so all these things actually do a check and balance of a sort to make sure this is covered. So I think that does make sense that that's where we put it, and we are still able to function in the same way that we have been.
Yeah, it's the proverbial cart before the horse. We have to do the one before we can do the next, because we have to amend the APC rules to also include rules regulating plat hearings. So we had to get one established before we can do the other.
And we will be seeing those, as Kevin said, in the next meeting or 2.
Well, depending on the timing of this ordinance, it would be, if it receives a recommendation this evening, it would be at your next meeting. It still could be at your next meeting regardless, I guess, of the timing of this.
Yeah,
Or
I
it
thought you were
could be
planning on that, but
Or it could be
I
a
wasn't painting you
subsequent.
into a corner.
Yeah, I think that's our hope and plan, is to have it available at your next meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Pam,
You good?
correct me if I'm wrong. I think-
Yes, I believe next meeting, and worst case scenario, the first July meeting when the new rules would take effect based on the new filings.
Okay. Very good, Kristen. Okay. Other commission questions?
I have one, and this is just for clarification. I don't know how much it's needed, but on page 9 of 17, so it'd be capital I, Article 10.7H4, and it's the landscape part, and it says perimeter areas, buffer yards, common areas, entryways, street trees, and other open spaces deemed appropriate by the plat committee or director. Can we add tree preservation area in there too, just so it's really in there? I don't want to see it ever get left out.
I wouldn't have a problem with that if our attorney and director don't have a problem with it.
Can you tell me where you're looking exactly? I'm sorry, I'm on page 9, but I didn't catch
Page
which
9,
subsection here.
capital I, it's Article 10.7H4 concerning the landscape plan. Tree preservation areas.
After street trees, you're wanting to put tree preservation,
Areas, yes.
tree preservation areas,
Ahead of
if it
any
exists.
other
Yeah,
open
I think-
space as deemed
Because
appropriate.
that's I think that's probably the one caveat is these, and again, we're just kind of working through this. I have to anticipate that on all the landscape plans that you receive, there are identified perimeter areas, buffer yards, common areas, entryways, street trees. That's an open space. That's on every landscape plan, right?
No,
No?
No.
Okay. If that's not the case, then it would just be adding another,
Add- Yeah.
If it's appropriate.
If it exists, or if necessary, or,
Then there
yeah,
shouldn't
if
be an issue with
applicable,
it.
maybe is a better way. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because it says as deemed appropriate
Uh,
in there.
I'm okay with that.
okay.
Okay. Are you good now?
And you said, sorry, Cindy, you said that was in two spaces, so it's this Article 10.7H4, and then was it somewhere else?
Oh, I don't know if it's somewhere else. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. I thought you mentioned 2 pages. Okay, perfect.
No, no,
I think maybe it's mentioned twice in this one article.
that could be.
Oh, yes, because it's overall.
Then
more
again at
detailed
the
than all
end,
those.
because it lists the specific requirements twice.
Okay, yes, for the 2 different types of development plans. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Do you have any other comments?
No.
You good? Okay. Any other plan commission comments from others? Victor's okay? Dr. Kelleher's okay?
I will probably be abstaining because I've been out of town and I haven't had a chance to go through this. Not that I don't agree with it, but I think you probably have the votes.
We have a virtual attendee tonight. Don't want to overlook you. Dave Schmitz, do you have any questions about this?
Thank you, Bob. No, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any objection to forwarding a recommendation to council with the expectation that this 10.7H4 gets the additional language that we've just discussed? Is there somebody that would like to make that recommendation, a motion for that recommendation? Victor, you're looking like you're anxious to say something.
Oh, I just never know how to word things. I
help
will
you.
go ahead and make a motion to send a positive recommendation of 2205 ZOA-01 Unified Development Ordinance Amendment, Spring 2022, to City Council with the amendment in 10.7 regarding tree preservation areas.
That's a favorable
Oh,
recommendation.
favorable recommendation, yes, thank you.
Second.
Too much to remember.
All right, we have a motion from Victor McCarty and a second from Cindy Spiljerik. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Johns?
I'm actually going to abstain on this also because I have not had a chance to read it through as detailed as I'd like to. I'll abstain tonight and make a commitment that I'll have read through it prior to the presentation to City Council. So, sorry.
All right. Dr. Kelleher?
Abstain?
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spiljerik?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
And Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Motion
So
carries.
we are able to carry a motion with our abstentions. All right. So we'll have the rules at our next meeting unless something hiccups and it's delayed a little bit. So we'll keep finishing this process here. That completes our items of business. We now have 4 public hearings. Reminder at the top of it here for any virtual attendees, if you are intent on making a comment but you're not present, please be sure and get your emails in to planners@westfield.in.gov with the appropriate hearing item listed in the subject line. First item is 2206-ODP-05 and 2206-SPP-05 Midtown at Westfield.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Planning Commission, good evening. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is an overall development plan and a primary plat request for 3 lots and actually 3 blocks. I think the description on your agenda may be a typo. It says 2 blocks. It's actually 3 blocks on a little bit over 37 acres located at the northwest corner of 191st Street and East Street in the Midtown at Westfield Planning and Development. This item is scheduled for a public hearing this evening. It has been properly noticed and advertised, and the department has received, we received an email comment late today that I believe was forwarded to you right at the beginning of this meeting. And as there are still outstanding items that we would like to work through with the petitioner on the plans, there will be no recommendation being sought this evening. With that, I think the petitioner is here this evening, would like to make a brief presentation, after which they'll be available for questions, as will I. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. Betsy Garfield, 20983 Stewart Estate Lane, Westfield, Indiana. And I'm also here with my colleague and brother, Brad Henke.
Good evening, Plan Commission. Brad Henke, Henke Development Group. We're at 1100 Chatham Hills Boulevard. Just wanted to take a quick second and introduce the Anthonys as well, who we work with on this project. Their family does IMMI on the south side of 191st Street there. Also, Brad Sheff is with us. He's with Y Engineering. So the road layouts that you've seen, he has been instrumental in that and can help answer any questions. So I think from our side, we're really excited to be here tonight and really kick off the Midtown project. I know there's been a couple articles out that you may have seen and may have awareness here, but we're really excited to let everyone know, and we have confirmation from them now that the northwest corridor of this, if you can go to the next slide, or the document we submitted, or yeah, basically right where the cursor is there, the northwest section there is about a 10-acre piece, and we have community health pavilions going that wants to be part of Midtown. So we're really excited to bring that forward. And then as the blocks, what we've done is just south of that, a 5-acre block, and then to the east of community health, they're looking at that as future expansion area too. So that's really what we're taking forward here. The northern piece, where the creek goes through, nothing north of the creek would be developed there. This would all be south of that blue line that you see there between East Street and 31 there. Betsy and I will be available for questions, and Brad Sheff is here as well.
And just wanted to add to that. I know this is something that we have worked with the property owners, the Anthony family, over time, just increasing standards, increasing the quality. We're really, really, really excited. I think this is an incredible opportunity for both our area, for Westfield, and to have community health not only come into our community, but also to meet the high standards that we've placed for this particular area with the brick and the landscaping, and just really elevating what people see and experience when they get off on this in this area, especially with all the residential around. So we are here to answer any questions, and as are the Anthony family, or I'm sorry, Chef. Thank you.
All right, we'll move into the public hearing, and then we'll invite you back to address things.
Thank you.
Just to double check for understanding here, the email that we received late this afternoon that was forwarded, the APC group email, was that forwarded to the development team as well?
I believe so. If not, we can make sure they get it.
Yeah. There was a property owner to the north that had a number of questions that reference all the promises you made back in 2019 to him. So we will open a public hearing on this at 7:34 p.m. Do we have any cards or emails?
Yes, we have one card for the Midtown project, Michelle Sig? Sorry, looks like two S's. Yeah, you're welcome to come
please
up
come
now.
forward and make sure the microphone is on and state your name and address for the record and share your comments.
Okay, my name is Michelle Sig, and we are actually the little white house on top of that, but it's 19429 Justin Morgan Drive. So if you see that white roof on the top, that is us. So it abuts us.
Okay.
We are new to the area, so if I am redundant in any way, please let me know, because I don't know exactly how far the project is. We just were notified that we were able to speak tonight. And also, being a newer owner, we just had a couple questions or concerns, because we haven't ever seen a presentation on how they were going to develop the project. Some of our concerns would be, like, I don't know what commitments they've made, so again, I apologize if I'm redundant, But, I mean, we're not obviously fans of billboards, trash hours. We would want them to be reasonable because, again, our bedrooms are like right there. The maximum of existing trees that are left in all those tree lines. We would also ask like no electronic variable messaging signage, just because again, the light pollution, that's our biggest thing. We also had a concern about the corner on the, it would be the southeast corner of that property, that there would not be a gas station there because again of the lighting, also the tanks that go underground, the creek. Another question we had is, was there a soil study done? Because I don't know with the waterway. The other concern we have is the busyness of the intersection at 191st and East, only because as those other land gets developed, how are people going to be able to move through there? And that being said, I'm also concerned if people, it's on this paper, if they cut through instead of going to the roundabout and they start cutting through any business that's there on any of the corners, that would be the southeast corner of 191st and East, that would be the southwest corner of 191st and East on the property that's not being talked about this evening, and also the one on the southeast corner of 191st and, or it'd be the northwest corner of the property on the southeast of, 191st and East Street. And then again, we are concerned about the lights because across the street on 31 the hotel, the Spring Hill Suites, they lined the entire building with lights, and we see that the majority of the year because even though we have tall trees, most of them lose their leaves between October to May. And so most of the year we do see that. So anything that would be built up, we would be concerned of any lighting that would be coming off of that because again, it would come through the trees. And then into our house. And I think that was it. So I just have those questions. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. The development team, I'm sure, will be happy to chat with you further. Any emails or other cards?
We have not received any emails since the public hearings opened. We only had one card.
Okay.
So that's all for now.
Since I have already provided the reminder and we had a comment, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:37 p.m. And if the development team would like to address anything that they've heard right now, go ahead and do so, and then we'll see if there's any commission comments.
Thank you, Mr. Horke. As you mentioned, we'd be more than happy to meet with Mrs. Sig anytime regarding the billboards. There would not be billboards out on 31. It would all be part of the uniform development, and the entryways will be very cohesive and in a high-quality Williamsburg type look and feel. So there could be like a monument sign near 191st or East Street, but everything would be very high quality. Same thing with trash. I don't have their final plan yet to know where exactly they would enter and exit the building, but we do know they are planning a lake on the north side of Communities Building, which would be south of the creek. So yeah, there you go. So they would be even southwest of that. And I believe there's a really neat wall they're doing that overlooks the lake there. So even further south is where the building would be. But we're happy to meet with her as we get the plans and go through everything. On some of the other development questions, we'd be glad to meet anytime.
Okay, perfect. Commission, questions or comments for the petitioner or for staff?
I have one. It looks like there is a left turn lane going in off 191st Street. Is this a full access kind of situation here? Do you guys know?
Yes, that full access there. And then Brad, do you know on East Street, is that a full access as well?
Good afternoon. For the record, Brad Sheff, Y Engineers office is located at 10505 North College Avenue, Indianapolis. The question for the access of 191st Street, that is an existing curb cut that was installed by NDOT during the major moves project that they came through when they realigned 31 with all the intersections from 465 north. That concrete apron is existing out there today, and it's just shy of 40 feet in width. And NDOT, in conjunction with the city, installed 191st Street to have 2 lanes on the north and 2 lanes on the south with a dedicated left in. There's a concrete boulevard that is for the dedicated left turn lane into the site at, would it help if I went up there and pointed it out? I don't have a, okay, sorry. Sure, can you see that, Brad? Does it work? Oh, got it, Brad, you got it. So right here's the cut for the NDOT installed to allow for full access. Then this is a broken concrete median to allow for full access movements inside and out, or in and out of the Midtown property, as well as the IMMI campus just on the immediate south of it. Then as we go to the access point off of East Street, that is also, East Street was put in as part of the Major Moves project as well, with an existing concrete apron installed, where that is not a 3-lane width, that is, they put a smaller or a 2-lane width at that location. So we're just making up with that concrete apron at both locations, which dictates the internal drives that then feeds into the first leg of the development for the community project.
It's potentially a lot of traffic movement right at that intersection in between two busy roundabouts. So I'm just trying to think about how that's all going to work with a full access kind of situation.
And there is an identical access on the south side that Emmy is using today.
Right.
That has the same movement capabilities. Any other questions? No. Mike, anybody?
Just kind of on that note, positive first, that I love to see things moving on this property. It's awesome. I love to see it. Any progress, if things have been approved a couple of years ago, is good progress to me. But on the topic of curb cuts, I have just grown to have a disdain for curb cuts due to the way that 32 is currently. It was after work last week driving home, and there was 3 cars, one after another, turned left into the Denny's curb cut, where obviously you're not supposed to do that. So that's something that I've just been very conscious of in seeing developments and so forth, in making sure any entrance to developments are as safe as possible. What's difficult with this property, though, is if you're going to turn left into it, there's only 2 ways in. It's not necessarily, oh, you're going through the roundabout and then you can make a right turn. So it's just something to be cautious and conscious of going forward, is how do we want this area to look and how safe. I mean, of course we want it to be as safe as possible, but what are we doing to have it be safe? I know years ago when construction on 31 hadn't happened yet, road blockers had been put up so people couldn't make a left turn into Taco Bell. So it's just, what are we looking at in the future, just again to make sure that this area is safe, because any opportunity for left turns, that there's going to be, might be slight, but a possibility nonetheless for accidents to happen. So just want to be cautious with that.
Any other questions or comments? If there are none, we appreciate your being here and looking forward to what you bring back after digesting this information, meeting with the neighbors, and we'll see you at a future meeting.
Thank you very much for your time.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Just wanted to, for the citizen that spoke, there is an existing PUD that talks about your buffer yard, since you're new to the community. But if you go in on the agenda and you click in on this particular item and then click on the staff report, there's an area that says the PUD, and there's a section about what buffer yard was approved when this was approved in 2019. So just if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, it's up on the screen right now if you want to take a look. That's
yeah, so then it's that ordinance number.
Yeah.
Just so you have a little more background information.
Yeah.
So,
All right, if you want to continue to talk, let's make this a public comment. Go ahead and fill out a form and come on up, but all of this is administered by staff and it is current. There hasn't been anything happen there to
no, there's been no amendments.
create
to
any
this
amendments yet. So
PUD.
what you see in that linked to the PUD that was approved 2+ years ago now should be what is the game plan. And it would be the game plan until they come back and ask for something different and receive approval. So, all right. Moving on. Next public hearing item is 2206-ODP-06 and 2206-SDP-06 Springwater. Staff report, please.
Yes, good evening. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you this evening is an overall development plan and primary plat review of 90 residential lots on approximately 50.5 acres in the Springwater PUD district. This project is generally located about 2,000 feet north of East 161st Street and Union intersection, east adjacent to Westfield Boulevard, between the Lantern Park Subdivision and the Summit Lawn Cemetery. This item is before you tonight for a public hearing. Staff has received one public comment and is provided in an available exhibit. The petitioner is here tonight, but does not plan to make a presentation. They're available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. We will open the public hearing on this item at 7:47 p.m. Do we have any cards or emails?
We don't have any cards at this time.
And no emails either, I assume.
The only email that we've received was the one comment in the staff report.
But nothing since the start of the meeting. All right.
Nothing since this morning.
We will hold just briefly in case there is somebody who is attending virtually that would like to comment on Springwater. Once again, it's email to planners@westfield.in.gov. And quickly let us know if you're going to want to comment. It is now 7:49. If we have not received an email, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
We've received no further emails.
Thank you. So, any questions or comments for petitioner or staff from Plan Commission members? Hearing none, I guess we're ready to move on with the next item, and this will be back at a future meeting when it's ready for its recommendation. Item next on our agenda is 2206-PUD-11, Town Road Crossing, PUD Amendment 1. Do we have a staff report?
Yeah, thank you again. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. This item before you this evening is a proposed amendment to the Town Road Crossing PUD, which the entirety of the PUD is approximately 214 acres in size, located both north and south of State Road 32, west of Little Eagle Creek. The amendment before you this evening is specifically for approximately 69 acres in the southernmost portion of the PUD, which was designated as the Rural Southwest District in the PUD's concept plan when it was originally approved in December of 2007. As proposed, the amendment seeks to modify the standards to accommodate an equestrian exhibit center and associated equestrian-themed custom neighborhood with private pasture areas and a maximum of 30 home lots. The real estate is located both in the rural southwest and the employment corridor districts of the comprehensive plan. And with that, Mr. John W. Shaywitz with Nelson and Frankenberger is here this evening and would like to give a brief presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner H&H Stables LLC, and present tonight on behalf of H&H Stables is Chad Hughes, Ron O'Connor, James Farmer, as well as Jim Schinover, an attorney with our office. As staff indicated, the matter before you this evening is a public hearing for a text amendment to the Town Road Crossing PUD to be known as the Town Road Crossing PUD Amendment Number 1, which is being requested in order to develop an equestrian exhibit center and associated equestrian-themed custom home neighborhood. The real estate is outlined on the aerial exhibit now on display. The real estate consists of approximately 69 acres and is generally located south of State Road 32, south of and adjacent to the Midland Trail Corridor, and east of Little Eagle Creek. What's the best way to advance? You want to click down? There we go. The map now on display is the zone district map for the Town Road Crossing PUD. The real estate is currently zoned per the terms of the Rural Southwest District of the PUD. The amendment seeks to amend the Rural Southwest District standards to accommodate the equestrian facility and approximately 25 residential lots, which will have AGSF1 single-family district as the underlying zoning classification. By way of reference, the current zoning for this district within the PUD would accommodate as many as 70 homes sites on the real estate in the order of a conservation subdivision. The concept plan for the sites now on display, an approximately 120,000 square foot equestrian facility is planned, which is outlined in black. The building will be capable of stabling up to 140 horses and is anticipated to have between 25 and 35 on a full-time basis. In addition to 4 arenas, 2 show and 2 for practice, the facility will also include dining and restaurant options, gathering and conference space, and retail space with a focus on equestrian needs such as tack, saddlery, and apparel. 34 acres of grounds, the leftmost area shaded in red, will contain pastures and fencing that buffer the outdoor event space. So that 34-acre space is the area here, shaded in red. The building area and outbuilding. Parking would be to the south of and to the east of the building area. The outdoor arena area would be north of that with the preservation of the existing tree line here. The Midland corridor is the corridor and the existing tree line you see at the far north edge of the concept plan. The outdoor arenas will be on the north side of the equestrian facility that will allow for users of the Midland Trail to watch the horses train and compete in outdoor shows. In addition, an equestrian-themed single-family custom neighborhood will be developed as a complementary component of the equestrian exhibition center. The residential plan features 25 custom home sites, which are anticipated to be priced from the $1.2 million range. The neighborhood design will provide residents of the community with access to private equestrian pastures as trails. In addition to the approximately 3/4 acre custom home sites, open space includes over 11 additional acres of equestrian pasture west of Little Eagle Creek. That's the area on the right-hand side of the exhibit. That's approximately 11 acres, not at adjacent to, but west of Little Eagle Creek. A robust equestrian trail system will connect these pastures and provide an opportunity to extend the trail system onto adjoining parcels to our south and to our west. Those parcels are identified here and identifies here potential future connection to the parcel to the south. Each homeowner will have access to a private dedicated stall to board their horses at the equestrian facility. This equestrian-themed lifestyle will provide a unique opportunity for residents, which we do not believe is provided in Westfield today. The slide now on display includes some of the images provided to capture the intended architecture of the equestrian facility. It's the hope of the applicant to start a multi-generational tradition of excellence and stable employment. H&H Stables, LLC, currently operates and manages barns and horse shows at Wild Air Farms, home of the Trader Point Charity Horse Show, and has for many years. In addition to the national and international draw of equestrian athletes, the facility will host other sporting and special events, including but not limited to potentially dog shows or indoor beach volleyball, just to name a few. In conclusion, we're proud to present this opportunity for a premier world-class equestrian facility and neighborhood unlike anything currently in Indiana or the Midwest. We conducted a neighborhood meeting last month, a summary of which is included as an attachment to the agenda. Topics that were discussed at that meeting included trail locations, annexation, town road, and its alignment and drainage, just to name a few. But again, that summary is provided for the benefit of the Planning Commission and attached to the agenda. We appreciate your time tonight, and we look forward to the additional public input we'll receive this evening, as well as comments and questions from the Planning Commission. After the meeting this evening, we'll regroup and address those items and return back to the Planning Commission at a future meeting date with a revised and updated ordinance accordingly, at which time we would seek the Planning Commission's potential recommendation onto the City Council. With that, I'll conclude and be glad to address any of your questions now or, of course, at the conclusion of the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to the public hearing, which I will open at 7:57 p.m. We have a card?
Yes, we have one card.
And just as a reminder, while that is happening, anybody that might be attending virtually, reminder, planners@westfield.in.gov, please email us if you plan on making any comments during the course of the meeting tonight. So go ahead and proceed, please.
Yes, we have one public speaking card. Linda, if you're available now, please make your way to the microphone.
Linda Nass, 1122 East 161st Street. I guess you probably know I have horses there and have since I've been there. So this is something I know a lot about. We have competed since the 80s, since the 1987 Pan Am Games, and we built the Indiana Horse Park. Many, many people did, and then we continue to have horse shows there. So we have all these type of horse shows there. We have hunters, jumpers, dressage, and cross country. About 200 acres. A lot of which we mowed and cleared and continue to do with volunteers to this day. But when you're talking about premier and world-class and stuff, I have friends who do compete internationally still to this date. I just got back from the Rolex at the end of April, visiting with those. Horses kind of down right now because the economy goes down, horses go down, and the Rolex is way down in attendance, and it's a premier place. The Hoosier Horse Park has 200 acres. Traders Point, when they started bringing in jumpers, we went there and competed. We were the first people from Indiana to compete in jumpers at Traders Point and did very well there. But they had like 250 acres, and they ran that show for 36 or more years with 8,000 visitors. It was quite premier, and yet it didn't have any of those beautiful big buildings, but it was set up like a horse competition field needs to be. Viking Meadows, I live across from there. They had 360 acres of the finest harness racing farm you ever want to see, and people came from all over the country to see it. It has now been developed. So I just want to say that I know they want to do a lot of things, and I am not one to stop equestrians because I think everybody ought to enjoy that. But in looking at the plans, and there's really not a lot of space there when you're talking about 69 acres and 43 of it may be for the horses and the buildings. And normally if you have horses on your property, you should have, we think, 3 to 5 acres. In California, they allow you to have a horse on an acre, but that's because they don't have good ground to begin with. And people love horses in California. So I think it's pretty tight on that. And when you look at the facilities and what they've designed for the indoor facilities, to do dressage, the ring itself is 65.62 feet by 196.85 feet. In their larger arenas drawn in that indoor building, you couldn't even have a dressage show because there's not a space to go around outside. There's no place to put the judges. So I guess they'd have to take that whole area and turn it into a dressage field. So anyway, lots of things, came to mind as I read this. Are they going to buy and sell horses? Is it truly one horse per house? Because I had 3 kids. I didn't have 1 horse. Most other people don't. I know in the presentation they talked about people ages 4 and up riding. This is going to be a commercial facility. You got to have insurance, and they don't usually let anybody on a horse who's under 8. Now, if you have your horse at home, that's a whole different story. But if it's in a commercial facility, I've been at Temple Farms. I've been at all the horse grounds in Chicago, stayed there, trained there. We trained, and the kids competed. And when you're talking $10,000 to $20,000 horses or $40,000 horses, you're talking one thing. When you're talking these big international and national people, you're talking 6-digit horses. It's a whole different thing. It requires a whole lot more. And you got to have turnout for them, even if you're coming to a show, even if you're just coming for a weekend, you need turnout. There's no turnout. Is there any way to get into that far pasture? Because if a horse goes down and you can't get into that wet pasture, it could be very problematic. So as I've organized horse shows and started horse shows and done training clinics, and we've traveled all over this country and competed with all levels of people, there's a lot to be considered here, and I don't think
I'm
even
sorry, your time has
I'm sorry,
gone
but even if
past.
they had the whole 214 acres, it wouldn't be enough space, I don't think, to do what they want to do. So I want you to really consider this. And when they say P3 catches my eye, I've put a lot of money into equestrian, but I don't want to put my tax dollars there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that the only card, or do we have others?
No additional cards. I believe there were 2 emails that were forwarded to you earlier today.
Previously.
Yep.
Yeah, nothing that's come in during the course of the evening, though.
Let me double check it one more time. Yep, nope, that's correct.
All right. It's 8:03. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Are there comments you'd like to address now, please?
Well, in response to a couple of the comments, just to talk a little bit about the space regarding the facility, this is Chad Hughes. He's our client, and if Chad can address that, just to provide some context for discussion we'll have with the Plan Commission momentarily.
Good evening, Chad Hughes, 17118 Little Eagle Creek Avenue, Westfield. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the Traders Point Horse Show. We manage and operate that facility, so we know a thing or two about this. The architect of the facility is here tonight that orchestrated it, Jim Farmer. He's been out at Traders Point since 1968. A lot of the same names and the same show circuits that our respondent talked about, Jim's been instrumental in, including the Pan Am Games. So we have a member of our staff that is well on top of this. A lot of the other facilities in the area are this size or smaller for the amount of horses. Meadowview, for example, 22810 Mule Barn Road, 56 stalls, 33 acres. So for this facility, we have done our due diligence, and our research shows with our experience that this is more than adequate to address the far right equestrian pasture. You see that there is access in between the 2 lots to be able to not only to bring the horses in and out, for turnout, as you know that's important, but we'll have plenty of access. And then where it says Little Eagle Creek Trail, that's actually my property. So I'm on site. And so for us to put this facility in, we feel like it's the appropriate size. We feel like it's an intimate, affluent community that's going to be very beneficial to the community, and it's by private dollars. There are no public tax dollars, period, going into this. It's all being funded privately. So That's very important to know that we're putting skin in the game. We want investment in our hometown, and this is a very important component that we feel strongly is going to be a very positive impact to Westfield, the community, and all of us that are going to live here. We're going to be living on site, and we're really excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to Plan Commissioner comments, one of which has come with a lot of materials and probably is among the most knowledgeable of our body on what we're talking about. So, Jenny?
One for staff and one for John. Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably going to be essay, not true, false, or multiple guess.
One for staff? Yeah.
Others may not. I do appreciate the paper.
3 down that way, right? Okay. 3 of these down that way. 3 of these down here. Okay. All right, and the rest are for the people that aren't here. When I first heard about this, I was obviously excited about it because we also have horses. I have scribed at Nancy Ursay's. I have worked at Traders Point. We used to live in Zionsville on 96th Street. We always had a table at Traders Point Charity Horse Show. I have hilltopped at Wild Air Farms. I'm not brave enough to jump, but hilltopping means you follow and you go around the jumps and not over them. I have a lot of concerns about this, and I will start with 2 things. The comprehensive plan for the rural Southwest, which was written by myself and my neighbors. And then I want to go into the existing PUD and what that means. And again, that was when we had subcommittee meetings, and John probably remembers, we had many, many meetings on this with Bo Wilfong and Jose Kreutz, who wrote that original PUD. So starting with the comprehensive plan, you have a picture on the first page, and if you turn it sideways, you can see that the gray area in the lower left-hand corner is the rural Southwest. If you go through this, and I did highlight some things, but I'm not sure they came through with the copier. The rural Southwest is to allow the continuation, I'm on page 27 now. The 1, 2, 3, 4th arrow down, is to allow the continuation of historic rural patterns, single-family houses on large parcels. New residential development will be accommodated, but only on large lots consistent with existing patterns of rural or conservation subdivisions as defined in the plan. The appropriate land uses in the rural Southwest, as you see in the upper box, are single-family detached houses on large lots in a rural or conservation subdivision. For your information, a rural subdivision is lots that are 3 acres or more, and a conservation subdivision is, I will let you know later, equestrian uses and agriculture. If you go to the next page and you go to the bottom paragraph, it talks about recognize the southwest area of the township identified as rural on the map as unique relative to other rural areas. Specifically, the character and pattern of development in this area is committed to small-scale, equestrian-oriented, and related rural uses. If you go to the next page, we talk about connectivity and sustainability of open space. And that was one of the zoning regulations that we were supposed to write if we'd ever gotten to that after we did the comp plan. It is to establish a rural equestrian zoning district with standards aimed at maintaining a rural, country-like atmosphere. Housing this district is secondary to the agricultural uses. And you see 2 pictures there, and the last, and the caption under the picture said, including riding trails. They talk about riding trails, but there is nothing in the PUD itself, and this is for John to note down, or in the concept plan that shows where those might be. So that's a deficit in what you have right now, and I know you're just starting, but just to point it out. You go to the next page, page 30, and it talks about subdivision regulations. Provide for conservation subdivisions that have the following characteristics: substantial open space that is connected, not as a lump on one side of the property, but is connected. And if you can look at that picture right there, nope, above, the one above. That was the original plan. And in that one, you can see that those home sites are, the open space goes between them, among them. It's all connected. And all of that open space is owned by the subdivision. In this case, the open space, which is lumped at the northern part of the property, is not owned by the subdivision. They don't have use of that, except if maybe they have a horse there. There's a conservation subdivision tool behind that we included in the comp plan, and I'll leave that for you to look at a later date. I'm trying to go through this as quickly as possible. A conservation subdivision shall mean and refer to a residential development designed to maximize open space conservation and create an interconnected network of permanent open space. If we go then to the existing ordinance, the PUD, as it was written in 2007 and approved by the City Council and gone through with Mr. Dobashewitz and the two developers, Bo Wilfong and Jose Kreutz. The top picture on this section shows you what the original PUD was. And we've talked about PUDs before and how they are presented as a unit. They connect, they function as a unit. Taking one out or modifying one often changes the whole character of the PUD. And I want to go through what this original PUD was meant to do. If you look on this, there's a bunch of boxes here that pertain to the colors. And I've written in the top one, which is kind of a grayish green, it's the very top of the picture, is a multi-use. It was going to be apartments and businesses. The second section, as you come down from that, still north of 32, this space here, was to be the Airport Hospitality District, based on Indy Exec Airport. And in there you can see there are businesses, there were going to be hotels, things like that that would be an amenity for the airport. As you go south of 32, there are two red areas north of the Midland Trail. And let's see. Oh, I lost my picture. This one down. Oh, where did we go? Do we have a picture of the original? That one right there. There's 32. Here's the Midland Trail. These two sections here were to be neighborhood commercial. And then below that, south of the Midland Trail, was to be residential in I think they were duplexes or at least attached residential. South of that, and on this site that's being proposed today, was the conservation subdivision, which would allow up to 70 dwelling units as long as there was 60% open space. And that open space in the original PUD had to be passive. It couldn't be swimming pools or active. There could be a playground or two, but it was meant to be passive. The lot size in the original PUD could be as small as 8,000 to 12,000 square feet. And that was meant to accommodate very much like Springwater, where you were concentrating your homes on smaller lots in order to preserve a lot of open space. In the existing PUD amendment, they have not mentioned a lot size, which means they could put 8 to 12,000 square foot lots in there. They're talking about 3/4 of an acre. So there's a disconnect between what they're saying and what the existing PUD, which they would fall to since they're not modifying that, says. The whole thing about this is this was to be residential. This was to be commercial. And one of my concerns about this facility, even though it's equestrian, is that they are talking about it being large, having businesses in it, restaurants, tech stores, they have flex space. It's kind of an open-ended list of uses. Those uses should be in these areas. They're close enough to the facility that if someone wants to go to a restaurant or a tack shop, they could go there. I'm not opposed to a small tack store in the facility where people might go to get broken bridles or bits or things that they might need during a show. But as far as any other, and maybe even a little place where they could go and get a sandwich or something. But a formal restaurant, conference areas, all of that should be north in the commercial district. That's what this PUD was meant to do. They also mention in their PUD that they would like to do other events, dog shows, beach volleyball. I don't know if they're even considering tractor pulls or conventions. Again, that's an open-ended list of uses right now. Most of those should be at Grand Park, not down here. Agriculturally themed things in this area might be appropriate, but other things that are corporate events, dog shows, beach volleyball should be at Grand Park. In fact, we have a beach volleyball facility being proposed up there, and I would hate to take business away from that business that we have supported. If I go into page 3 of this second handout, you can see it starts at the bottom with Rural Southwest District. And this is the original PUD from 2007. And this is what's defined in the Rural Southwest District. The purpose of this district is to provide for development of a conservation subdivision. I'm on the next page, bottom of the first paragraph. As outlined in Chapter 2 of the Westfield, Washington Township Comprehensive Plan. A conservation subdivision is a residential development designed to maximize open space conservation and create an interconnected network of permanent open space, something that this does not do. Permitted uses, there are a whole lot of uses here. The proposal before us is to add another use, which is an equestrian facility, but it also adds commercial, restaurants, conventions, volleyball, a whole lot of other things that really don't belong on this site. Under number 11, residential common areas and privately owned amenity areas along with accessory uses, structures, and improvements, including areas, all of which will be made available to the residents within the real estate, as specified by declaration. I don't know if they're requiring that anybody who buys a house here has to have a horse and has to belong and have a horse boarded here or not. That's what it sounds like. But if they're not boarding there, then they aren't going to have, don't have a horse there, then according to your description, they won't have access to the site. And certainly they don't have access to the pastures. On the next page, it talks about lot size at the very top, and they're talking about 8,000 to 12,000 square feet for a lot, and this is in the original PUD. They have not modified that, although they are talking about 3/4 of an acre. And again, the reason for these small lots is much like in Springwater, to concentrate those homes on a small part of the acreage and allow the rest of it to be used as open space. There are a whole lot of other things in here. If you get down to the bottom of this page, which is Article 3, page 5, there is Section H. Section H has been removed by the new PUD amendment. If you go to the next page, Section I has been removed by the proposed PUD amendment. Section J and Section K on the next 2 pages have also been removed from the PUD amendment proposed. Those all related to the conservation subdivision, the maintenance of open space, the management of the open space, and the permitted uses. So by removing all those, they pretty much gutted the ordinance as related to a conservation subdivision. Next thing I want to go to is their application and the ordinance itself. There was an Exhibit D called a project description. I don't know if you have that you could pull up. I didn't hand it out because I figured it was probably on the computer here. This was what they presented at the council. Is that not part of our packet? It's called Exhibit D, Project Description. It was presented at the council. Okay. It hasn't been included in this then. Okay. In Exhibit D, which is the project description, they could talk about an equestrian exhibition center. I don't know what exhibition center means, but apparently it is more than just an equestrian use. It is all the other uses that I have mentioned, which to me.
It's defined in the proposed ordinance.
Pardon me?
It's defined in the proposed ordinance.
Okay. It talks about a world-class equestrian facility, and like Mrs. Noss, I have been to some of these. This is not enough property for that to happen. The other thing about world-class equestrian facilities and A shows is they're often like golf tournaments. You can't just have one without sanction from the governing body of the equestrian association, just like I'm sure you couldn't say, I want to move the Masters to a different golf course. They have set dates for years. They have requirements. That's something that if you want that, it would take years to get. Traders Point itself took years before they got the level of horse shows they wanted. It took years of waiting for somebody else to give up those dates or that show. It also took years to build the footing for the arenas and lots of other things that went on. There is another equestrian facility south of Indianapolis called the C-Bar C, which is mostly for Western, and they also do tractor pulls and things. That's why I mentioned, is that something that could be done up here with this ill-defined list of uses. They want to provide dining, restaurant options, gathering, conference space, retail that focus on equestrian needs, and other flex space. To me, this is a business that doesn't belong south of the line I showed you for the Midland. Again, they talk about an extensive trail system, but there is nothing in there. H&H Stables, it says currently operates and manages barns and horse show at Traders Point. And I believe you've only done that since December. Before that, I think it was a lady named Debbie, but I'm not sure about that. Traders Point Horse Charity Show was not operated by these people. It kind of makes it sound like that. There have been none since for several years, since the family that owned Traders Point stopped doing it. Liz Johnson went in a nursing home and has since passed away. It says that you have 25 beautiful custom home sites with homes anticipated to be priced from the $1,200,000 range, and yet in your ordinance you have 30 homes as home sites as permitted. And I don't know how you achieve the 1.2 million range. There's nothing in there. Square footage is not in there. There's nothing that would make me think that might be, other than a wish, that it couldn't be smaller homes. It says typical lot sizes will be approximately 3/4 of an acre, and I think I've already gone over that. A robust equestrian trail system, and again, I don't see that. I know that Village Farms, for those of you who don't know it, was going to be an equestrian community, and there were bridle paths through that. Most of those have now been kind of absorbed by residential lots because the equestrian community really didn't survive. Equestrian communities are difficult to maintain. They're expensive. They eat a lot of money, and even when they are run well. Under definitions in your ordinance, you have equestrian facility, and again, we list a whole lot of other uses that I don't feel are appropriate here. Development standards, you say 30 lots, even though you talk about 25, and I think show 25 here. The open space on section 5.3 of the ordinance eliminates sections H, I, J, and K, which I'll let you all read at your leisure. There are no architectural requirements for a building here. In section on rural Southwest and this conservation subdivision, there are architectural standards for residential. There are no architectural standards for commercial or stables. So that is something that is lacking that if you wanted to proceed, certainly would need to be put in there. The other thing is,
There's
commercial
language,
stable.
as identified in the staff report, there's language regarding the commercial architecture. It would defer to staff.
Okay, I'll look at
As a
that. I didn't
character-
know that it
as a
applied to
character
this
design.
area. It could. And I will look at that, John,
it
because I did
does.
note that that could be possible. Also, a commercial stable, even a private stable, is a special exception in AGSF 1. They all go to the BZA, and the BZA hears from the neighbors. And as you know, special exceptions are things that are permitted only if they can be, if things can be added that make them fit in an area. They're not permitted by right, they're permitted with conditions that make them fit, or they're not permitted if they can't have conditions that make them fit. All of the, both private and commercial stables have gone to the BZA. They have had things attached like manure management. This whole piece of land flows southeast into Little Eagle Creek. Manure management at the barn itself and how you're gonna haul that off is one thing, but manure management in the pastures is another layer. Often they have imposed hours of operation and lighting. Many other things are, and often landscaping and buffering are imposed on these types of things. Most of my neighbors have gone through that. I went through it. None of that is written in here. Looking at the design in general, I agree the acreage is not large enough. And while there is a pathway between the homes to get to that pasture on the east, that's not real convenient to walk horses through one pasture, between homes, to another pasture. It's not the best design, not that it can't work, but it's labor intensive and the horses are away from view of the barn managers and the people who are watching them. So I guess in summary, I was excited about this in the beginning and now I have a whole lot of reservations. I don't want to lose the conservation subdivision idea. Once we do that, we'll never get it back. I don't want to have commercial south of the Midland in this area. It belongs either in Grand Park or smaller areas north of the Midland and south of 32. It's not what the comprehensive plan called for, and a lot of other things that I've said, and I'll stop now and let other people ask questions or make comments.
If I can respond, there's a
Please,
few.
go ahead, John.
There's a few items. The petitioner had the opportunity to approach the BZA and make a request, and we thought it was more appropriate for the legislative body to weigh in because it was an existing PUD. That doesn't take away the authority of the Board of Zoning Appeals because the authority assigned to the Board of Zoning Appeals for that use is predicated on the ordinance which is adopted by the council. So we're having this discussion which introduces the public because it's a public hearing matter so that neighbors can weigh in on the proposed adjustment. While perhaps I should have made it more clear, this is an alternative to the plan for the conservation subdivision that was originally part of the PUD. It's an alternative. You had mentioned that sections were gutted. Those sections that were removed from consideration related to the conservation subdivision, so they wouldn't apply to this proposal.
Right.
So that's just that should be clear to everyone, and if it wasn't, then the description would apply to development in the manner that we're proposing rather than a conservation subdivision proposal. So we thought it was appropriate to bring it to the Plan Commission, go through the public hearing process, obtain feedback, and have the council weigh in on the legislative decision to modify the existing PUD. It's an alternative. It's not a conservation subdivision. It's an equestrian facility, an equestrian-themed neighborhood, which are supported per the terms of the comprehensive plan, in our view, as written, as provided in the copies of the information you handed out to the Plan Commission this evening. We think it's a good plan. We're excited about this proposal. To the extent that you've provided comments about lot size, we can address that. We can throttle down and narrow the focus, as staff's indicated in their analysis to us. They made a suggestion on modifying things so that it was clear that there were certain things that were ancillary. Chad's conveyed to me that they need to have that restaurant or food service use to be able to track certain shows for that facility. So clearly it's ancillary. It's not Logan's Roadhouse, you know, with everything that Logan's Roadhouse is along Town Road south of the Midland Trail. This is a use that would be inside the building that is part of the facility. So those things, I believe that we can narrow the focus down and we can throttle that down. We'll step back and get some more information and provide that to the Plan Commission about the size of the facility and the necessary, the acreage for that. The petitioner is comfortable that it's an adequate size, and the building itself will accommodate indoor shows where that's something that's not the norm, if you will, as I understand it. So lighting, landscaping, buffers are all addressed per the terms of our proposed ordinance. To the extent that it's not specifically clear, we can add direction in the ordinance. It doesn't it doesn't mean that it's not applicable. It just means I'll make sure that the arrows are bright and pointing to the sections of the UDO that would apply. With regard to hours, we'd be glad to hear your thoughts on that. With regard to prohibited uses or those uses that would need to be throttled down, we'd be glad to get additional input from the Plan Commission about those particular uses that are important, that we make sure that they're clearly ancillary, tie a square footage into it that's clearly ancillary and not anything that's definitely unintended for that site. But glad to see that you spent a considerable amount of time in looking at this and getting us information that we can respond to.
As much time as we did the first time, John. I am concerned that this will not survive as the way it's directed, but that's not having anything to do with my vote. The only thing that would connect would be, if it fails, what are we going to do with this land? Should it be maintained as complete open space and available to these people? We can't start putting houses in it. That's not what the conservation subdivision is. That's not what the Southwest Rural section of the comp plan says.
And under our proposal, a plan B, if you will, because nothing's forever.
Right.
Whatever happens to the real estate in the future, if not what we're calling for and specifying in our ordinance, would have to come back to the Plan Commission, receive public input, and ultimately be legislated and approved by the council if it was something different than what's being proposed.
Right.
So it's A or it's nothing unless the council says it's something else. And that's the law we live by everywhere within Washington Township. So.
And I guess a big part of this for me is losing a conservation subdivision, something we worked very hard for in only this one area of the community. And what you've built on the southern half of that is simply a subdivision. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that is not what was supposed to be here. It was supposed to be 3 to 5 acre lots or a conservation subdivision. This doesn't fit. You have future development stubbed into the south, future development stubbed into the west. So is that just going to be more
Well, we don't control those parcels.
I know you don't.
We had just heard from those owners of those parcels that they'd like an opportunity to perhaps, if they have a horse, to get onto this piece, to connect to it.
Right.
In the future. We don't, if I
I
was
understand
unclear,
that, John.
we can't speak on their behalf. It was just a suggestion that was made to us that we communicated to them that we would provide to the Plan
Right,
Commission.
and
and
I had assumed also that it might have been staff's suggestion to connect with, now the parcel to the left, the 40-acre parcel to the left, came into the BZA a year and a half ago, I think, for a single-family home. It went to the BZA, and I believe Mr. Cardinal provided access to that parcel for a single-family home. So that stub that you have going into the left right now goes into a BZA variance of use for a single-family home. And again, my concern is that the way this is laid out, our conservation subdivision or any opportunity for that is gone.
At this location,
Yes.
the conservation subdivision qualities and characteristics are written into the comprehensive plan. They're not codified in the zoning ordinance.
I know.
They would be.
They are here.
They would be as applicable to other areas within the rural Southwest District of the comprehensive plan as they would be potentially to this real estate. It's not a.
Yeah, and for every other area, somebody's going to come in and want to do a subdivision. So-
Again, I just want to, this is an alternative
I
for this
understand.
real estate to the conservation subdivision that was approved as
Yes,
part of the.
and I guess what I'm telling you as an alternative, as presented, it is not what I think the comp plan or the people who wrote it from this area or the city who voted on it would find acceptable.
Understood.
Moving on. Kristen, do you have thoughts and comments that don't duplicate? We've covered a lot of ground. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground already, and I think it was
Yeah,
great
sorry about
ground to
that.
cover. And we try not to duplicate, so please, whatever you would like to share, please do so.
I guess just a couple of things, John. I also share the concern regarding if this didn't work out and there's a building there and an outdoor arena and a lot of open space, and I understand what you're saying, they'd have to come back. But it gets tricky because you have residents who have purchased into this thinking that they're going to be looking at beautiful horses. And so, same thing with the golf course, right? I mean, all those people believe they're living on a golf course. So I just think there are some considerations to think about going forward on this idea of, does it turn into green space? How would that work forward? So I'd like more discussion on that as well. I do agree with Dr. Kelleher on this idea of the conservation subdivision. This is a PUD that in the southwest area has been talked about a lot as an example for our community to do a conservation subdivision. And it is important that this area gets preserved in that way. It's a special part of our community. I mean, I believe that. I think a lot of people believe that. And so any development that we put out there needs to be in context with the area. So I guess I'm just going to share those concerns, and I'll stop there, that I do share those concerns with Dr. Kelleher, that this would be, if it moved forward, done very well and in context with the area. However, I also hate to lose the conservation subdivision.
It is an interesting conundrum whereby what happens if it doesn't work in the future. And in 2007, 15 years ago, the developer at the time thought there was a good plan for a viable conservation subdivision at the location, and in 15 years, the opportunity that makes that financially viable hasn't arisen. So there's a reason we're back today, and it's because we have what we believe to be a great opportunity that we've frankly received support of from council members, from surrounding neighbors, and they view this as a great alternative for the real estate rather than 70 homes on the same parcel. That's just an observation as to why we're here. With, again, it's not a choice between a conservation subdivision or this. We've had 15 years to figure out if somebody can make that financially viable, and in 15 years that hasn't presented itself, and we have a plan today that we believe is as much a benefit to the community, if not a greater one.
I think the 15 years, there have been a lot of things that haven't developed in 15 years. Ackerson Farms was about the same time. McColgan's property was about the same time. They are now developing. So this is even farther out. I still think there's an opportunity for this to happen. I hate to throw it away and just say, can't do it, we'll give it away and not try. And I know that a couple of neighbors called me. I didn't make it to the neighborhood meeting, but a couple of neighbors called me and they said, they're only gonna put 25 homes. And I said, no, and the ordinance it says 30. So I think they were under some different impressions too.
And we'll work on narrowing that focus. There's 25 shown on the plan. That's what was planned. We'll get with Chad. If that's a sticking point for the neighbors, we'll reach out to those folks, have a discussion with them, and if 25 is the number that works right, it'll be 25.
And how do you get to $1.2 million house? We get things presented like this all the time.
We have not been asked that before. We've represented
No, and I know you.
thousands.
I know, but
over the last 20 years, there's been thousands of houses, and
Yes.
no one's ever. How do we get to the price point
Well,
that
no,
you're
but
telling
I'm
us?
asking because you present a price point, so therefore I think I have a chance to respond. Not that I can ask you to do something to make that price point. That's not something that's in my purview. But you made the statement, and one of the things that I know that people that I know that have horses that have million-plus homes either have their horses at home on their own property or they're boarded at a nice facility. I don't know too many people that want to live on a pasture with manure and flies, but that's why I don't know how this will fly, so to speak.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
John, may I also ask that I was having difficulty, and maybe this is staff, on hitting the link of your attendees at the neighbor meeting. That link wasn't working for me. Just as an aside, I can look at it tomorrow, but
We'll get with staff in the morning and make sure it's available.
Yeah, I had that same problem.
did you have the same problem? Okay.
Victor
Thank you.
McCarty, shall we hear your thoughts if you have any that you care to bring up?
I'll just say two things. That one, I would be very excited for this because I think it would add something new to Westfield that I think over time we've lost. I appreciate you mentioning the Viking Meadows area because I remember as a kid driving by there all the time and loved seeing the horses. And I hear from many community members of needing more equestrian facility and so forth. So I would be very excited for this. But two, just in terms of input, I think this is a good time for me to listen. I was never a good student, so this is a lot of good material to read up on, look at, and I just look forward to future positive discussion with this and just making it the best possible development that we can have for Westfield. And I would also, I guess I'll say one more thing. Thank you very much for wanting to invest into your hometown. That is always very much so appreciated, so thank you.
We'll go virtual for a moment here. Dave Schmitz, do you have things that you would like to bring up? I was afraid we might see you sleeping on your bed, but good you're not.
No, I don't need to belabor the discussion too much. I was very interested in hearing what those with equestrian knowledge, how they would weigh in tonight. It's not something I'm knowledgeable about. So I wanted to hear from Jenny and from any public comment. The plan at first blush seemed like it was a really interesting plan that would have elements that would be a neat fit, but also seemed not terribly integrated with what was given to us. It seemed like an AGSF1 compliant group of houses and a business. And so I was, as Victor said, was more interested in listening tonight, and I hope that the petitioner, and I'm sure they will pay attention to some of the comments made by Jenny and others, and hopefully can make a go of this because it is a really interesting project if we can get to a point where it works for the community and for the petitioner. Thanks.
Thank you. Comments from my left? Cindy, your
I have
right?
plenty of comments. I did offer some of them at council. And I think the three of us were actually on planning commission, if I'm not mistaken, back when we did this 15 years ago.
I was.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
I was on council. And
yeah, we were all there.
And I voted against this one.
I thought I did too.
No, it was me and Ron Thomas.
Was you and Ron Thomas? Okay.
What a likely.
But we're talking 15 years ago, and we're talking about an ordinance that is 150 pages long. And it's got an incredible amount of detail in it, and it was all supposed to work together. Again, not taking off parts and saying, we'll do this alternate plan here, and then everyone else has to figure out how to make the rest of the project work with what this is. And that's always a challenge when we have these amendments, and especially when you're talking, it's not just, a variance of a standard roof height or something like that. I mean, you're really changing, to me, the nature of what this is. I think we were all initially incredibly excited because it was something different, and it was something we had talked about here in wanting for our rural Southwest. Not necessarily up on the Monon and not necessarily next to Little Eagle Creek, and abutting commercial uses and all these other things. It starts, when you look at the package, is when it becomes a concern for me. And one of the biggest concerns for me is Town Road. And I think that is why you haven't seen development out here. One of the significant reasons is because we have not done Town Road up there. And I broached this at council. I don't think that's on any capital plan that I've looked at right now for any kind of immediate funding. And that is going to be a significant project. There's one concern for me. The idea that we're going to have potentially up to 140 horses and just the odor and the manure and the flies that go along with that, and to have that so close to neighborhood commercial, to our Midland Trail, and again, to the already impaired, Little Eagle Creek, all these things kind of are really troubling me. And how to make that work and how to get this actually planned here, I don't know if we're going to be able to get there. I'd like to say that we could. I'd like to have a project like this in our community. I don't know that this is the right location. And I worry about the viability for the entire project, not just yours. I mean, this alters the character of the entire project, in my opinion. And I've mentioned to you, I kind of have a problem with the way that this is coming in as an amendment to something that was based on our Washington Township zoning ordinance at the time and not our UDO. And then you're coming in and making your own rules for this that don't even jive with what is in the rest of it, that was under the township zoning ordinance rules and the rest of the PUD. So there's the disconnect, again, that I'm having trouble wrangling with personally.
Okay. Can you convey those questions to staff, not this evening, but so we know what those questions are?
I'm doing so everybody can hear if they're at all interested, obviously, but they're hearing it now.
No, but when you mentioned a disconnect, that when I hear disconnect, I hear a difficulty or impossibility to administer. And I haven't heard that
no,
from
a disconnect in terms of the way that, how does this work as a project when we're talking about something that was approved in 2007 under old standards and with a lot of specific specialized standards for this project. And now you're taking this piece out using a combination of current standards, exempting yourself from different parts of an old zoning ordinance. Do you know what I mean? It's very convoluted. And which is one of the reasons I wanted to see this PUD.
And that continues to happen. I mean, by way of example, that continues to occur today when projects come in within Bridgewater. Typically, the Plan Commission sees it, the council reviews it. There are still commercial buildings being built. Previously, there were areas that were zoned for commercial that became multifamily. It went through the public hearing process and changed and modified over the years because the ordinances for these, just like the zoning ordinance, are living, breathing documents and not static. There'll continue to be changes, and we won't have our community won't have not a Bridgewater.
Well, that's why I feel like this whole thing, if you wanted to do this, then this whole thing has to be redone, in my opinion. I'm not willing to actually.
That hasn't been what I'm saying is that hasn't been the custom and practice in Westfield of bringing in all of Bridgewater when there's been a parcel or parcels that have changed within Bridgewater or any other PUD. It's today that we're
This one hasn't even started yet, though, and there's the difference. There has been nothing started at all on this PUD.
Correct.
So again, it's one of those things, it's not like we're midway and we're shifting to change something to make it fit now. There's nothing here now. There's been no movement on this.
We'll move forward with the understanding if that complication prevents passing up an opportunity for this development, then we'll hear that.
Well, I mean, I
from
have my other concerns too. It's like, if and when we can resolve that, I have.
But that's a fundamental thing. I mean, we can talk about the color of the moss on the trees, or we can decide whether or not we're going to fly into the forest. And that's a flying into the forest thing. If we can't get over the philosophical hurdle about addressing this parcel on this site within the overall PUD, then we don't need to go through the exercise of talking about the color of the moss on the trees, because we're not passing bridge number one, which is the philosophical issue about the overall PUD. And
but
we
I'm
can't
not getting to address the rest of the PUD and how it's impacted by what you're trying
and we
to
can't
do.
offer you that. This petitioner, and we described that at the plant, we made it very clear at the council meeting that if there are 4 people who don't think we can pass that hurdle, let's not take up lots of hours of the Plan Commission's time, of the petitioner's time, and everybody else trying to figure out what, again, back to the color of the moss on the tree, if we can't get over the philosophical hurdle of this petitioner can't bring you what he doesn't have, which is consent from any other owner within the PUD about modifying their real estate. And since the council meeting, we haven't heard from any of the council members telling us that they can't overcome that hurdle, that they can't overcome the hurdle, the philosophical hurdle for us to start drilling down on the details of this proposal, because they may believe that it's a equal to or superior alternative to what's there today.
I don't know that most of them are aware of the 150 pages of the ordinance that covers this property. I don't think they're aware of that yet. So that's something, it's new. It's new for us. I mean.
And you've described it to us tonight. There's 150 pages there, and the rural Southwest District occupies about 20 to 30 of those 150 pages. So,
but it's part of,
not that we're
it's part of the bigger
counting
project,
pages,
though.
but it's this piece of ground. Here was the old proposal. Here's the new proposal. Do we want to work on the standards of the new proposal to make it work, or can we not overcome the philosophical hurdle of this is one part of the PUD? And that's a message that we need to hear from decision makers, so that we know that we're not going to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy on the part of the Planning Commission and the council, only to come back and say, boy, we really appreciate this, but I didn't clear hurdle number one. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, because this is a fundamental issue. We're gonna get to a certain point where we're gonna come back to the council and they're gonna say, why did you guys spend all this time? And my response would be, because you didn't tell me I didn't clear hurdle number one.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to explain that to you. I explained this to you at the council meeting too, so it's not new for you. I know
Right.
at this point.
John, I would add to you right now that you would not have my support at the council. All right, for those reasons.
Because of the hurdle.
Basically for the reasons that Jenny enumerated tonight. The ideas, of the reasons that Cindy has discussed. My own experience in horses, cleaning stalls, when I was a kid growing up. My experience in real estate. I know when we sell real estate, there's a certain amount of acres we look at per horse and what would support horses. And you know, I've got kind of a rule of thumb in my head, and this doesn't match what I'm comfortable with. And so, and if somehow we could get to all of that as a council member, I would also like to see the business plan, because I'm very concerned that this can't work from a business perspective. I mean, we can get through the zoning and everything, but at the end of the day, it worries me. So I think it's a great concept. Like to see it someplace else in Westfield, tried. But even then, I would like to see the business plan, and certainly I'd be willing to sit down and discuss it with the petitioner and try to work through it, because that does interest me. But at this point, I can't support the project in this particular area.
Were you through, Cindy?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Another comment from Victor,
You can go ahead.
please.
Okay.
You got your thought.
Just two thoughts to add to that. One, I'll pose the question back to my fellow commissioners. If not here, as I've asked before, where would we want to see something like this? Because I know this is something that our community would love to see. But two, I think seeing a business plan is outside the purview of anyone that makes decisions up here. Well, no, I'm saying as a council too. I don't think that is a purview that's something that goes into decision-making with whether it be planning commission, city council, et cetera, because that's up to the private sector. If they think that it is something that could be successful, then it is up to them to make it successful. That's just my thoughts on that. To have that being weighed into a decision on a yes or no, I don't see that as something that, again, is just a factor into that. That's just my thoughts.
Well, I will answer. that
Victor,
question.
not to be argumentative, okay, but I would tell you that when I presented my subdivision for approval at the APC, I presented my business plan along with my development plan, because I was pretty proud of it. It was a business plan that I took to the bank to fund my subdivision and to get the loans to make it happen. And so I felt that in an open, honest atmosphere and being excited about my project, I wanted to share that with the APC and with the council. So in my own mind, as a council member, not necessarily an APC member, I'm kind of like to see those things, those business plans that are associated with the projects. Now, I can't require anybody to give that to me, but it helps me to make a decision, if that makes sense.
I totally respect that and understand that, because I think if someone wants to see something, that's totally fine. But as you said, it's not a requirement. So to have that be dependent on a yes or no vote, I just don't see how, again, that's a weighing factor in it, if it's not a requirement on said decision. If it's a requirement, yes, absolutely, but it's not. So that's just my thoughts.
And it's not a part of my decision. I'm just throwing out there as an equestrian person who has talked to people in the community. There's a question as to, this is not going to be international. It may be local. And I would love to see something like that. I don't think there's enough land for that, number one. I think it should be in the northwest, where we have some large parcels of land that are probably less expensive than this. It might work better for them. I also don't want to lose the conservation subdivision that was a key part of the Southwest Rural Comp Plan. So,
Would you like to say something?
I sure would. As a homeowner and adjacent resident, I don't like the conservation district idea. I don't want 70 houses in my backyard. Regardless of how it's set up, I'd much rather have 25 or 30, 25 high-end affluent homes on 3/4 acre lots that are infinity lots. So if we go back to that, what I mean by infinity lots, exactly. So when you see the pastures, you're seeing expansive pieces of land, much better than the conservation. I live there, I know. I see the big trees. I'm a big tree lover. That's why I bought the property. I want the trees to remain. We're going to even build on that. Westfield has an opportunity. This is unique. And when I say international, I do mean we're going to have a very quaint, very intimate setting that we may have people from abroad come and invest in these homes because they want to be part of this facility. You've got to think of it like a Bridgewater, like a golf course, but instead of golf, it's horses, it's equestrian. You can appreciate that. And as far as addressing the waste and manure, we have 125, 130 horses on a full show in addition to the horses we board at Wild Air, which, by the way, Jim Farmer's wife sold the Johnson family the property in 1968. So when I say that we've been involved, our team has been involved. So that's no misnomer in Traders Point. So that's just a clarification, okay? So we have had just a wealth of knowledge. He has designed this facility to work in such a way on this amount of land. When we talk to Jim extensively, this will work. With our animals that we have, we got a full board farm or barn at this time where we're at currently. In addition, we house 90 horses that come in for the shows. We don't have smells and manure issues because we haul it off site. We have implemented a policy and a procedure where it's used as compost, and it's a green initiative. It's very green, it's very beneficial. We have issues already with our soils, and as far as runoff, the farm chemicals that are in the fields right now are much more detrimental to my little Eagle Creek, as they will be on my neighbors are here too. We don't want to see 70 homes. We don't want to see farm chemicals in there. This will be pastures. What does grasses do? Why do we have wetlands? Why does DNR require that? It filters. It filters any waste that would be out on the fields. I mean, you have your farm and you want to know how we're arriving at these numbers, and I'm kind of talking because there's a lot of talking points that you had. Okay, imagine something like your estate out there. That's how we're arriving at these numbers. So you're thinking, well, why would someone want, well, you got to think about the affluence and folks who love to have horses but don't necessarily have the ability or time or want to take care of them. They have this. They're going to have a facility that is going to allow on-site staff care for the horses where they just come and ride a lot like grooms, as you're familiar, where you have the caretakers of the animals day in and day out, and we'll have that kind of multi-generational career opportunity. This is going to be a profession. We're going to be able to start traditions in Westfield. Westfield's going to be able to be known, and that's what we're working on, and we've got all kinds of interest around the state to make Indiana the premier equestrian state. Not Kentucky, but Indiana. That is the thought. That's really where we're wanting to go with this. And so this is an opportunity. So when I say international, I truly mean it. You've got the executive airport right down the street that we can get certain premier athletes that can come in, bring their, and buy a home here, have their horses stabled at their house. They go and they'll be able to bring it to a one location. You know, going to a barn, what we have found is the folks that are the equestrians love coming to the barn. It's their life, it's their spare time. Imagine, it's kind of like living on a lake where you have a boat versus having a boat in your driveway. It's a lot harder to bring a boat and go and launch it and then enjoy it on the lake. But if you live on the lake, you just go down, get in your boat, and you go and enjoy it. That's the same concept here, just like living on a golf course. It's going to be an opportunity. So these folks that are going to be purchasing these homes are going to have the expansive feel of these infinity lots. And what I mean by that, there's going to be so much green space that it's much better than the other concept, because the definition of insanity, it hasn't sold. I mean, in 15 years, and I'm no offense to being the authors of that, I don't want 70 homes in my backyard. I'd much rather have 25 high-end affluent homes. And when we arrive at those numbers, these homes could be 6, 7, 8,000 square feet or more when they're all said and done.
Part of the problem is all the things you're saying, there's nothing in the ordinance that says that. You know, there's nothing in the ordinance that says these are going to be large lots. There's nothing in the ordinance that talks about your manure management, which is something we do with every stable that's approved in this area, and hours of operation and things like that. So, you know, there are a whole lot of details missing, and if you can put those in, that might be something to consider. Again, a part of my issue personally is losing a conservation subdivision, which was very sought after by the people who wrote the comprehensive plan years ago. Not you, you're new here, but the people that wrote that, including many of your neighbors, came to the meetings and wanted that. So there are, you know, again, there are devils in the details.
Right. And I've been here since 2016, been in Hamilton County nearly my entire life, so since 79. So very much been around the area. But yeah, I can understand that. We don't want, talking to my neighbors, 70 homes in our backyard. This is a great alternative. It's a better alternative. It's good for the community. It has less impact on the school systems, but increase the assessed valuations. It's a good deal all the way around. I just don't see why you have an opportunity to embrace a proven benefit where we've had proven success, and I'm just a little bit dumbfounded at the concerns, to be quite honest.
Well, and I think the devil's in the details.
And we'll defer that to our council. Thank you.
I agree that this is, or do you have a helpful comment to insert right now, relevance?
Well, you can go ahead. I'll finish.
So like
when you're done.
Jenny, I first heard about this, and I thought, wow, this is awesome. I happen to live in Village Farms, that place that had advertised itself as live among the horses. Not that I would ever have one, but there were.
Just your wife would.
That my daughter would love one, yeah. But it wasn't really a long-term viable thing. We had a great deal when Ralph was still alive, and the section of Village Farms across from Our Lady of Mount Carmel remained his playground. And so we could just walk down there and see all the activities and enjoy it without having to be a part of it. And then the family started taking over the land, and horses lose money. They wanted to develop land and make money. So I still live in a really nice neighborhood, though. I like it there. this would be a whole lot easier for me to wrestle with if the current PUD had not been approved. I liked a lot of aspects of that, and that was in like one of the first years that I was an elected representative here, and I've been on Plan Commission for a long time. And I agree, there's a lot of good things about this, and I think conservation subdivisions are something that we are very inadequate by lacking having any of them here. But I couldn't wrap my arms around this as the right place to have all of the uses that were on that. And if it had been, 3/4 of a mile southeast in something with a little better existing terrain to work with, I'd have been all over it probably. But I just felt probably the kind of discussion we're having tonight was in our future if we did this, and lo and behold, here it is. But we have that ordinance on the books, and I would wrestle myself with deciding that something like this is the ideal replacement. We need to go ahead and move on. I'm not sure I am, but I don't know a lot about the horse industry, so I don't know how viable all these things are. But I'm not really here to assess the business worth. I got to look at the land use. Is this what we want to have right here? And I think there's reasons to have it, and a lot of the discussion that you've, I believe, pretty clearly heard about, you've presented this much, but we really need this much. There is just so much detail about all of the things that have been the questions behind all of this discussion, that if we don't get those, we're going to be wrestling with something that we just don't feel confident in. So it's going to be tough to send a positive recommendation to council to take this and run with it. We've got 2 out of the 7 here that have expressed their concerns. But we need to help get it to the point where it's something that should be getting council consideration for whatever direction it's going to go. So I won't labor over anything further. I would like to see this back with a lot more detail and a lot of the concerns that have been raised addressed here, and the things that you say you're already doing that have to be a part of this, put it in there. So we're not just hearing, oh, you do it, okay, let's expect that you're going to do it again. We need to see the certainty of that being all part of what we're going to be tasked with voting on and making a recommendation to council. So there's a long way to go. I don't know how fast you can come back with that level of additional detail, but I would look forward to seeing it back. And you need to read all your signs from everybody, and particularly the council representatives, but please do it and we'll see what happens.
Well, again, we appreciate everyone's time this evening. These types of dialogues and discussions help our clients make informed decisions about things moving forward. So it's not, sometimes their discussion is more detailed than general, and all the comments help us moving forward. So again, we appreciate it.
Thank you. And Kevin, do you still have a comment?
Yeah, maybe not specific to this project, although this is probably a good time to talk about it since it's come up. This whole discussion about, amending a piece of a PUD versus the whole, I am genuinely curious, and I'm not trying to be difficult here. I am genuinely curious how, any specific reason that modifying this 69 acres impacts, the proposed modification impacts any of these other districts, because.
Well, if you look at the neighborhood commercial standard.
Can I finish? Frankly, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different projects, at least, in this PUD that will all develop independently from each other, very likely. And I am not sure what's in the PUD that ties it all together in a way that if you change a piece down here, it impacts a piece up here. And that's just a genuine question and interest in I'm trying to wrap my head around those comments.
This one had actually requirements for outdoor seating and dining areas on the Midland Trail right away in that neighborhood commercial section. Like, that whole thing is supposed to be blanketed with seating areas and outdoor public use areas. And again, thinking about dining areas next to horse manure and flies potentially, you know, these kind of things, it does impact it, for me.
Thank you. That's a specific thank you. That helps me. I mean, these general comments about,
No, and it's stuff like that.
that's
It's
not
until you
helpful
read the
to me.
150 pages and understand what was
Yeah.
actually incorporated and why.
Yeah.
And then you start going, well, that does have an impact.
And Kevin, for me, it's not that, it's that this whole PUD was written with a residential low-density component that then went to a higher residential component with the duplexes, that then went into neighborhood commercial. So the intensity decreased as you went south. The ones on the north part of 32 were, you know, the airport hospitality. So we started with, you know, a higher density along 32 for things that might service the airport, hotels, motels, you know, restaurants. And then we decreased as we went into the southwest rural, in decreasing intensity of use. That's how it, to me.
devil's advocate, 70 to 25 is even less, right? I mean, it's even less
Yes,
intense.
yes, and that's, I knew that argument was gonna come up.
I mean,
But there is more open space in the 70 that's commonly used, and the lots are smaller. I mean, there was a reason for making the lots smaller. I think initially they had them larger, and we talked about, no, we really want to have as much open space that's interconnected, so everybody, again, just like Springwater. And this land, this open space was available for everybody to walk through and around.
everybody in all of town, what's this called? Town Road Crossing?
Town Road Crossing.
Yeah, this had the majority of the open space for the project.
Okay.
Yep.
So again, it does tie back, you know?
No, and those are fair. I appreciate that. That's something that I think was lost in.
Yeah, and there
some
didn't
of the-
have to be 70. The density bonus was if you provide at least 60% open space in this, you could have up to 70. I don't even know how many are in there. But it was to allow a density bonus, because if you're saving all of this space, which is not necessarily land you can't build on, some of it is, but some of it is land you could build on. By saving that and not putting houses on it, you could put houses on smaller lots and get more in, because we know for most developers, it's the number of lots they get on a parcel, not necessarily the size of them. So it was to allow a density bonus so that it would make it financially worthwhile to save all that interconnected open space.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot more to it, you know, obviously, than over 12 or 15 years later comes through, but.
Sure. Thank you.
If I can add one more thing to your question, Kevin, because it looks like it's single-family attached there just a little bit to the north. And I don't have horses, but I have friends that do. And one thing they're always concerned about is the kids that might be in these other areas. And I realize town road's there, but I don't think it's a big barrier. Are they going to come over, jump the fence, get in with the horses because they want to pet the horse and see the horse? So having this adjoining single-family attached already approved, I think, is another potential thing for us to think about.
And that's this area right here. Was that what you're talking? Okay.
On the north and east side of Town Road.
Yeah. Town Road extended.
Got it.
No, thank you.
Okay. We'll see you back at a future meeting.
Thank you.
The last public hearing item tonight is Andover PUD, an amendment for parcel I, 2206-PUD-12. Proceed with the staff report.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item being presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Andover PUD. The proposed PUD amendment associated with the 2-acre parcel located on Grassy Branch Road just north of Washington Woods Elementary School. The petitioner is proposing a daycare facility which is permitted. However, the petitioner is requesting a PUD text amendment for the following items: increasing the maximum allowable allowable building size from 8,000 square feet to 11,000 square feet, decreasing the front yard parking area setback from 30 feet to 10 feet, and utilizing fiber cement siding as a permitted primary building material in lieu of ephes. The item before you this evening is up for a public hearing. This item was introduced at the May 9th City Council meeting. It was properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received one public comment. A virtual neighborhood meeting was also held on May 17th. The petitioner is here tonight to present details of the project, and they are available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have them for staff.
Is there a petitioner, are you through? Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Horney from Murphy Development Group, based out of Chicago, although I grew up in the Fishers area, went to Mount Vernon High School. So good to be back in the area. Murphy Development Group is here to present a PD amendment, based in the Andover PUD. We're presenting on behalf of Higher Ground Education, which is our tenant. Higher Ground Education is a nationwide daycare school, and if you don't mind going to the next one. A nationwide daycare school, they operate under the name of Guidepost Montessori. It's a Montessori daycare. They have over 100 schools nationwide. Here in Indiana, we just recently opened one up at 9910 Geist Crossing over in the Geist area. We have another one under construction in Carmel on Michigan Road, 102nd and Michigan Road. We also have one more under contract that on Spring Mill Road that is, cross my fingers, going in for permit next week. And then we also have one that we're working on in Noblesville as well. So there are, if you go to the next slide, they're a school that was started in 2016. They have over 100 and they're growing and really like the Indy area, and we're excited to be bringing them here. The goal here tonight is to talk through the 3 items that we are going to be asking for amendments of the PUD. So if you go to the next. So the first one is the use of the required yards. Effectively, we'll walk through the site plan in a minute, but the way the PUD was originally written, it was a 30-foot setback and then a 60-foot setback for the building. We are within those setbacks for the building, but you'll see we're over 75 feet away from the road in terms of the parking lot, but unfortunately, in order to get the required parking, we cannot squeeze it unless we just have a really, really long, wide row of parking, which we don't believe is very effective for walking kids into the school. The second one, which was the original only amendment that we came in to ask for, which was, this was originally scheduled as a daycare use when the Andover PUD was put together. Unclear to me why it had a specific square footage requirement. The 11,000 square feet is the typical school size that we use, and often the typical school size you'll see for most franchisee schools. This is not a franchise, but if you see a KinderCare or a Goddard or a school like that, and the reason that is the number of classrooms that you have as you sort of grow through the cycle of infants to toddlers to the 3 to 6 year old groups. As a young dad myself, I have 3, 6, and 8 year old little girls. You want your kids to kind of be able to grow through that, and if you have a school of this size, you're able to have enough classrooms of each of the age groups. So that's the reason for the size request. The last request, the fiber cement siding, ephes is in the PUD. Frankly, we want to be here for a long time. The tenant's signing a 20-year lease. They have 4 5-year extensions. We're outside a very, very nice neighborhood. EFS does not hold up. It looks commercial. We don't like it, and we think Hardy Board is a better product. I understand it's asking, we don't, look, as a developer, I don't like to ask for anything if I don't have to, but in this case, we think it's a better product. It will fit in nicer to the neighborhood, and will feel less commercial in an area that, although it's designated to be commercial, we're at the front of a neighborhood. And so we want to be, I mean, the neighbors across the street are residential. You'll see that the design is intentionally residential. It's not trying to be a flat-roofed commercial building because we know where we're at and we're trying to fit into an area that is residential. So if you don't mind, we'll go to the next slide. Weston already introduced this. We're right beside the elementary school. For us, literally A-plus site location is not on a busy road. It's beside an elementary school. Because of the reasons I talked about, if you have a young family that's growing up, you do want to be where the parents can drop off their kid, one kid that's 5 at daycare and one kid that's 8 at elementary school. So we find that to be fantastic that we found a site that accommodates those things. If we go to the next slide, talk a little bit about who we are and what we're doing. So the school operates Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I want to be very clear about this because this is a question we get often. It is a daycare. It is not an elementary school. And so there is not a defined start or end time. So the pickup, and we'll go through this in the traffic later, the pickup and drop-off. Pickup typically happens between 7 and 10. We have a full traffic slide that'll talk through this. And drop-off is between 3 and 6. Because it is not a defined start and end time, we don't see the peaks like you'd see at an elementary that's like, 8 o'clock start, let's go, and then you get really large queuing, and then you end up having traffic issues. That's not what we see at our schools. What I'll present to you is parents have to come in, they park their car, they walk their 2 to 6-year-old. I mean, it starts at 12 weeks, but have to walk in them, check them in electronically, which is why we have the data that we have to present the traffic. Check them in. It's 7 to 10 minute process. And so you'll see when we present the pickup and drop off traffic that we do it in 15-minute intervals to kind of give people a sense of the percentage of people coming in over time. Staffing count for this size building, if we get approved at the larger size building, is 23 in total, but only 15 at one period of time, given the times we have shifts where some staff start in the early, some staff stay late, and then they overlap. If you want to go to the next slide. This is a very generous lot. It's a 2-acre lot, and frankly, much larger than we typically need, so it's got an incredible amount of green space. And a little bit difficult to see, but for a little bit of context, the neighbors are directly, it's east, but it's north on this picture, and then to the south, or to the east, you can see this, but it's actually planned south. So we have neighbors there and neighbors above. When we had the neighborhood meeting, the biggest concern that was raised was folks who are both above us and to the side of us wanted to create, a better screening between us and their use. So subsequent to then, if you don't mind, I'll have a landscaping plan that we added a row of arborvitae and viburnums kind of alternating so that we can, there we go, along the entire portion that is abutting any residential. So this is a series of viburnums and arborvitae that will start at 4 to 5 feet and then grow up enough to create a visual barrier between the two. Again, it operates Monday through Friday, 7 to 6. So kids are playing on the playground from 11 to 2. So typically don't get noise complaints, but it's kids playing on a playground. In terms of access, it's a fairly simple in and out, two-way, both ingress and egress, but we do have two entrances, or one entrance, one exit. To the extent we need to go one way, we could do that, but it's not proposed currently as that. We're open to that if that's a recommendation. Or the playgrounds in the rear are set up to be sort of separated between the different age groups, and we'll present what later in this what the actual sort of look and feel of that looks like. We are providing now 39 parking spaces, and requirement is 37. The one thing that we've been told subsequent to us putting this plan together was we need to relocate the dumpster, which is on the left side of this plan, that needs to sit behind the building, or not behind, but at least behind the front face. So we will work on that per Weston's recommendation. Going to the next slide, to the extent care, there's 5 what they call children's house rooms, which are 3 to 6-year-old, toddler, young toddler, and then nido, which they refer to as baby. The number under each of those is the capacity, and that's all dictated and driven by the state of Indiana Health Department's licensing. So daycares are very licensed, heavily regulated, and the state departments kind of dictate, based on the size and number of teachers, the amount of capacity. So if you go to the next slide, this is a little hard to see in here, but it's a combination of stone base, actually brick base in this case, because brick is still in the PUD. And then it was originally EFS, and we've now are asking to make where the light gray and dark gray to be hardy board, again, for the reasons that I already brought up. It's residential in nature, meaning a sloped roof. That's purposeful. What's a little difficult, but you can kind of see the box, the dotted line boxes. What we do in the center of the roof is oftentimes people are asked where the HVAC units. We don't want to see them screened, so we basically create a well inside of that roof so that all of the units are both screened visually and for noise purposes. So all those are within that well. In terms of signage or lighting, we do have the signage, which we know have to go through a different process, but there'll be just a sign with gooseneck lights over the entry, and then the intent would be to have a monument sign, which we'll show you what that looks like here in a second. If you want to go to the second page, the next page. We presented this landscaping. Again, we'll ensure that we're abiding by both the PUD and all the necessary ordinances. We got many comments on that. Did not have a chance yet to respond to them. Signage, again, this would be what the monument sign would look like. It is not internally illuminated. There are just some small spotlights in the evening to light up the sign itself, and the gooseneck lamp lights over the sign. In the evening, we're not open. We have no reason to be lit up, so we'll ensure that we're not bleeding light off the site, following all the photometrics that Westfield is requiring. And there's no lights in the playground or anything in the rear that would affect the neighbors. Site fencing, the site fencing is all 6-foot black aluminum. The spacing is dictated again by the health department. It has to be a certain number so that kids can't escape you while they're out playing on the playground. And then if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about traffic patterns. So again, this is what over a 4-month period at one of our typical schools. So what you don't see is this 60-80% in at one period of time. It really is a flow. The highest peak is 16%. 16% of the kids for this school would be 20. We have 39 parking spaces, so we're more than overparked, even including when you include the employees that would be there at any one time. So we feel very comfortable even in a, you know, a peak period, we're not having stacking, queuing off the road, given the fact that the elementary is down the road and, you know, will at a period of time in the morning create that traffic, but that's not something that we're creating. If you go to the next page, you can see a design of a couple of the example schools, and then you can flip through the rest of them. The playgrounds are cedar playgrounds with wood chips, and then the balance is typically grass or landscaping. These are not color, plastic, cheap things that kind of erode over time. We do have the shade structures, which are high quality, to keep kids kind of safe throughout the summer. And if you flip through, that just kind of shows you some examples of what the interior classrooms look like. So happy to open it up to your questions and comments. I would ask, to the extent it's acceptable, for your approval tonight as well, if that's something you'd be willing to do. Thank you.
This item is in front of us for a public hearing. So first thing we need to do is move on to the public hearing,
Sit back down.
which I will go ahead and open at 9:31 p.m. The population of the room is thinned a bit. So I assume we have no cards, no
Yeah.
emails.
We have no yellow cards at this time. No emails at this time either.
All right. I'll do one last reminder. Should there still be somebody out there attending virtually that had held off wanting to make a comment here, it's 9:32. Please email planners@westfield.in.gov quickly to let us know if you have thoughts you'd like to share. It is now 9:33. If we haven't received an email, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
No emails.
Public hearing is closed. This item is in front of us for a public hearing. You had asked about an approval. We're not slated to be offering an approval. I assume there's some detailed things that still need to be attended to. So the staff needs to work further, and this will be back at a subsequent meeting.
At this time, we are satisfied with the ordinance as far as staff goes.
All right. When there is that option, it's usually identified for us here that we could
Apology for that.
possibly approve it. All right. Before we get to that point, are there any questions or comments from Plan Commission members for staff or for the petitioner?
I have a few little ones. Oh, I'm sorry, Jen.
Please, you can go ahead first. You had first last time.
I know, that's fine.
I was just looking at a few of these standards in the original zoning, and I'm wondering if there's going to need to be other changes. I'm looking at like the signs, and for freestanding signs, which I guess would be considered a monument sign, in the old township zoning ordinance.
That's right.
like, that had a setback that had to be a minimum 20 feet from right-of-way. And again, I'm not sure exactly where they were proposing that. Okay, it wasn't clear to me. Some of these standards too, it's like your maximum sign surface area per freestanding sign, 10 square feet per gross acre, or part thereof. And I mean, I'm just wondering if we have little issues like this that we need to clear up, just so there's not anything like hanging out there that could be problematic. Because I mean, if you're bringing something forward and we don't if we don't change that language,
Sure.
then it would make it like non-conforming or something.
Sure.
So,
I mean, to the extent that we can get it approved, we want to start to build the school. We're a developer, so we're always in a hurry. But, I mean, signage, the sign's not big. 10 square feet per acre, we stay well within. Because it's a 2-acre site, it's not going to be 20 square feet.
yeah. And then it's got a maximum sign surface area, 1 square foot per every 2 linear feet of building facade. I wasn't sure if everything
yeah,
that you're
that should be fine.
proposing now, and that's something I guess for staff, but if we were gonna forward a recommendation, I was just concerned that we've kind of got all those layers taken care of, given that this is a PUD from 2003.
Yes, thank you for those comments. There is a concurrently submitted detailed development plan submitted with this PUD. So these 3 items were identified when we reviewed the detailed development plan as any potential issue that may arise. So at this time, the signage, I would defer to the petitioner if they feel like they need additional requests. That would be on the petitioner.
Signage, again, you don't go to a daycare because there's a big flashing sign on it. Signage is not a big deal for us. We will fit within those recommendations.
So to that end, since this has been through a detailed development plan review and we have identified all of the standards that have caused trouble with
Yeah.
approving the development plan, yeah, signage is an additional thing that doesn't go through development plan review, so that would be, it does seem like this would be ready for a recommendation this evening, if he's not worried about signage. I think that would be the only extra thing that we haven't already seen, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I know there were specific, like, requirements for a non-residential use, a certain amount of landscaping that had to occur. And I know that you're showing now the lines of trees and stuff. I didn't know if it actually met this old zoning ordinance, because I didn't think you were amending that part.
Yes,
Or maybe you were.
the current PUD and the previous zoning ordinance from 2000, which would be what this detailed development plan would be reviewed by. The PUD and the zoning ordinance excluded buffering between differing land uses within the PUD limits itself, and with on that, the border on the right-hand side. The petitioner has stated that they're planning to provide additional enhanced landscaping per the neighborhood comments from the meeting that was held.
And that's where I was confused,
Yeah.
because it said that no buffer was going to be required, but then later on it talks about if you have a non-residential use adjoining residential that you had to have, and it was like vague in terms of what you had to have. Again, I just want to make sure that we've got all this stuff covered.
I mean, to be clear, even though it's not required, we want to be good long-term neighbors. That's why we voluntarily added the landscaping buffers between.
Right, but
homes
I'm
that
saying
we're
I saw in this a specific thing that I thought applied, even though it said that it didn't. Later on, there was other language that like said it did. So I don't think this was very well written. I just want to make sure we're all kosher.
We're checking that, but generally speaking, if there's a conflict, if there's 2 conflicting standards, then the more restrictive would apply. And if there's one rule that says buffers don't apply, but there's another rule that says you have to plant certain things in this circumstance, then the second one would be the one that we would be enforcing. Does that help?
I think so.
I'm not sure that's the situation here. I haven't looked at it, but it sounds like that might be.
And that landscape buffering would also be picked up in the detailed development plan review as well. And you're planning to comply with everything as far as that goes. Okay.
Yeah. And we have a ton of space. The green space is 4 or 5 times the amount we would normally have, but it's a great lot, and
Well, I know, but it's just what you're proposing. I just want to make sure that it's not conflicting with anything in the old, in the non-amended PUD, if you will. I mean, so if you go through now and it doesn't address something, and so then it would default back to
Sure.
what was in place at the time, I guess. That's just what I'm trying to make sure we don't run into a problem with.
To the extent we got comments from the planning department, we plan on addressing or have already addressed them. So we don't have issue with that.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there's maybe still some questions to be answered. So if you're okay waiting another 2 weeks, I think that would be our preference, if we can
Certainly.
make sure that we're dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's.
Kevin?
That is my preference as well.
Okay. They're only asking for a couple of changes from the original PUD. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's what's on our agenda tonight, which means everything else complies or will have to comply.
Yes. However, I think there's question of
What's it going to comply with?
well, that or
Okay.
if maybe everything was
Yeah, I mean, it
included
seems
in
like
this
if they're
that
at this
maybe
point,
should have been.
it should have already been reviewed, and these were the only two things that they wanted to modify, and everything else was.
I mean,
fit,
that was
but-
my initial thought too, but it sounds like there may still
Yeah.
be some
Okay,
cloudiness.
well, it's whatever staff wants to do. I just want to say thank you for waiting all night. It's been a very long evening, and thank you for all the thoughtfulness. I'm very impressed with your designs and your thoughtfulness of placement of parking and fences and everything. I mean, I think I've not seen that level of care for a facility and thoughtfulness to that extent before, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for switching to the hardy plank from that APHIS material. I think it's much better material, more durable, and it's going to have a much nicer look to it, so thank you.
If you don't mind telling the city of Noblesville that would be very helpful.
Not sure we have a lot of sway. Dave Schmitz? Do you have
No
any
additional comments,
thoughts to?
thank you.
Nothing? Okay. There you are.
Nothing additional, thanks.
To my right, questions, comments for petitioner or staff?
I'll just echo the same sentiments of appreciating the attention to detail on this. And I know I've personally received a handful of questions on what's happening in this area, and I didn't really know until it was introduced at city council meeting. So I do know now that there is some interest for this type of use in this area. So I think that's fantastic. And even though we're not acting upon it tonight, I do appreciate your boldness of just wanting to get this through. So
Don't ask what you don't get what you don't ask for.
exactly.
I
Kristen?
thought that was an excellent presentation. So thank you for your detail. And I like the architecture as well. I think you've been very thoughtful with that. My only question, as we talk about the landscaping, which I really appreciate you going above and beyond for those neighbors, is that something, Kevin, that should be in this amendment, what he's doing, or having some type of substantial compliance with the landscape plan?
If it's above and beyond what's required and he's willing to commit to it, I suppose we could codify that. Is that what
I think it would, yes, please. If he's willing to do it, I mean, I
is
think,
that,
It's not a problem. Again, we're trying to be good neighbors,
Right.
and they want that division of landscape screening. It's a fairly common ask. Frankly, we like doing that more than some groups will ask for a site-proof fencing, which we kind of don't love. It's kind of a great look, and I think the landscaping softens it a bit better. So we don't mind doing that.
yeah, we can certainly add that to cleaning this up before you see it again.
yeah, I would really appreciate that. Since you're willing to do it, we might as well have it in the amendment. And then just one other quick item. We had another daycare in another part of the city, and the lighting was an issue for some of the neighbors. And I know you touched upon it, that you're doing the gooseneck lighting, and it won't be some hugely lit monument sign. Do we need to do anything with that?
We've provided the
Looking at-
photometrics to Weston, and to my knowledge, haven't gotten any feedback that they weren't in compliance.
was the question regarding lighting?
The lighting.
Do
Yeah.
you recall, Weston, when we had that issue on the west side where the lighting was, it was on the monument sign, the type of lighting that was lighting at Kevin, you probably, oh, I'm
I don't-
sorry.
Yeah, I don't recall
Sorry,
that
Kevin.
specific question.
Okay,
Yeah, it was
sorry.
prior to
Kevin
your
probably
time.
remembers.
I know.
I
this-
just don't want a
on-
similar situation because this is surrounded by so much residential. So I didn't know if anybody else had that.
As a part of the
concern.
detailed development plan, we have reviewed the photometric plan that was provided by the client. Currently, they are conforming with those standards. There's setbacks from residential areas for light poles. They're complying with that. And as far as the foot candles go, they're also complying with that standard as well. So it's, from what I've seen on the photometric plan, it's fairly minimal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you don't have lighting all over the back of it that goes with those neighbors. So thank you.
Sure. So with no further comments, and we're not going to go ahead and approve tonight, we'll see you here presumably on June 20th at our next meeting or whenever you're able to make it after that.
Thank you.
Mr. Johns, not to put you on the spot, do you think there'll be a second council meeting in June?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, and we'll see you at whichever meeting you choose to come to. Yeah. All right, all other agenda items are continued to a future meeting, which takes us to reports and comments. First, Plan Commission members, anything for the commission to enjoy? Random
One
topics?
thing, we
No?
had talked about discussing the housing study and also some other issues. If you guys remember, a few months ago, we had had some discussions, but I haven't
That's
seen
gonna be
those
at a
shown.
future workshop meeting.
Okay,
So it's on the list, but it's over the horizon a little bit.
okay.
So,
Thank
downtown update, I guess. Nothing? Good. City council liaison.
Council met May 23rd. Linda Nass and Bob Beaudre gave a first quarter RDC update. Osborne Trails PUD Amendment 5 was approved, and ordinance reestablishing the CUMCAP Development Fund was approved. We also approved an interlocal agreement between NDOT and the city concerning the 32 bridge over Cool Creek, which will allow trail development under 32. That's why we're doing the interlocal. We had introductions for a vacation of right-of-way within the Style Right Meadows plat up in Chatham, I believe, yeah. Ordinance approving a lease between the building corporation and RDC and pledging local income tax revenue for the Union Square parking garage project. So that is continually moving forward in the process. And lastly, we had an ordinance adopting the second-class city status, and that will have a public hearing on June 13th.
Okay, thank you. I don't recall, was there a BZA meeting? Is there a report? Or was there no meeting?
No meeting. The meeting is next week.
Okay. Community Development Department.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this quick. I think we spoke about this last time when creating the plat committee, which thank you for advancing the UDO amendment this evening. There's a couple questions that we need answered really at the direction of the Plan Commission. And it's really two questions. One, how many members will the plat committee be? And it's going to either be 3 or 5, right? I think that's the statute. So we'll need to select that, and we also need to determine the makeup of that committee. And at least one member has to be a Plan Commission member.
Mhm.
The others do not, and they could include, and I may be speaking a little bit out of turn here, I think they could include city staff. I know city engineer has been mentioned as a possibility.
Yes, you
So
have brought that up, that the city engineer was agreeable to, as long as it was business hours and we could all coordinate calendars. My personal preference would be for 5 members, just to make sure we have ample representation. I am able to be a part of that, and it seems like maybe the president of this body should be part of that. I have not heard from anybody about a desire to be a part of it, but there may be people out there teeming with enthusiasm that they just haven't shared yet. I don't know.
Kevin, does that mean one of you would be a staff person? Or,
I think that's an option.
well, I think one of the staff people should be there to tell us what's
Well,
going
we'll
on.
definitely be there staffing it, whether or not we're actually on the
As a
voting
participant.
members of the
I
committee.
see. Okay.
Yeah,
is a
we're not
different
gonna
question.
run blindly through this and hope for the best. Although that could be fun.
Yeah, congratulations. It's all your baby now, if you want.
That's all right. No, you are getting out of this one.
No, we will definitely be there supporting regardless of if we're voting members or not.
Well, I said last meeting I'd be happy to be involved, but if it's during business hours, it's just that I wouldn't be able to do that then. And then just to answer your first question real quick, whether it be 3 or 5, I lean more towards 5 just because it's what I'm used to, at least with BZA. I mean, appointment-wise, we can have an operation of 3 and then, you know, not need the extra 2, but I think having the statute of 5 would be good.
I agree with 5 too.
5 seems to be the consensus.
Anybody else?
Dave Schmitz,
Persuade
any
anyone?
comments?
It's only a 1-year commitment. It helps persuade any of
There
you.
you go.
You only get to
So-
be on it 1 year, and then you have to be appointed again.
Okay. So do we know what time they're going to meet?
Yeah, we're looking at, we've kind of done some scenarios here on when it works in the schedule with TAC and all the other things going on. It's looking like maybe 11 a.m. on the 2nd and 4th Mondays, essentially the council Mondays, that morning works well in our monthly calendar for having this meeting. And I think we had talked about 1 meeting a month, 2 meetings a month. I think 2 meetings a month, while it sounds like more, actually helps us in keeping things kind of moving through a process, and rather than sitting on our desk for an additional 2 to 3 or 4 weeks if somebody just misses a deadline. So
You gotta fall back.
yeah.
I thought you had indicated it would only be a single meeting, but if
That-
there's a good reason to have 2, then
That's what we initially thought about, but then we talked through it in more detail as a team, and certainly on the planning team, two meetings was preferred, just to kind of keep workloads manageable and things not just sitting around.
and if there was somebody that didn't quite make it but didn't have to have their own meeting, is it more likely that most of the action would be at the first meeting or the second meeting, or is it really impossible to predict?
I think it's hard to predict because it's really going to be based on how soon engineers can get us revisions after TAC. And once we receive those, review those, make sure that those are compliant, then we have to notice the public hearing at the plat committee. So there's a lot of lead time to the meeting. So it's really gonna, which again, the more we have, the easier it is for us to.
It is kind of tricky, though, asking people to serve on a body that, you know, meets every 2 weeks during the day. And unless you're retired or you're city staff, I mean, that could be a stretch for some.
Well, I think we have 2 members, Bob and the city engineer. That's a start, and they're gonna be 5. And you're gonna have 1 or 2 meetings a month, kind of depending on how things.
Depending on what's ready.
It would be nice to have a citizen member on it, only because if there was somebody who might be interested in being on the Plan Commission or the BZA or some other body, it might give them some experience to kind of step up. I don't know.
I think it'd be a good entry-level position if someone's just interested in what happens in planning and so forth. So, because I mean, I know I hear from people of, you know, oh, Victor, what's all involved in planning commission or city council or BZA or this or that. So, I mean, I know there's people interested. It's just when it comes to time commitments and
Yeah.
the levity of it.
So I don't know how you work that. Do you just ask around, or do you put out something?
Well, we're still
Do we
being
need to
recorded,
specify
right?
that we want this body to appoint 1 citizen member, 1 staff member, 1, I mean, is that what we need to actually have in language?
Yeah, we don't need to identify individual people this
Right.
evening, but
But that's what we need to
Yes.
identify,
Okay, well,
who's,
how about
what groups.
city engineer, 1 Plan Commission member, 1 private citizen? Somebody else's turn now.
You want to stick a developer on there too? If
Well,
you're
you
going to
could put
stick
one of
a
my
citizen?
team members on there, too.
No.
Excuse me?
no.
Put one of my team
I wouldn't put a
members on there,
developer
too,
on
if
there,
you
they'll
want.
probably be before you.
It will be
Oh,
there.
if we have trouble, if we have trouble
You may
finding
wanna
people
say at
available at
least one
11
plan
o'clock on
commission
Mondays,
member.
we might
At
need to
least, sure.
go that route initially. But if we find somebody that could step in, then we can excuse you to your normal duties and move on with whatever, so.
Yeah. For those last two positions, I would just, like you said, have it be at least one planning commission member or at least one staff member, whatever it is. So that way we leave the door open to have a second person from
Well, one
whatever.
APC member is a given.
No, I know, just not,
Might be nice if there were two.
We should hit up Chris McConnell too, with Parks, because why not? He's staff, and there's landscaping and stuff part of these. He does.
He is. I'm not sure I want to have it so heavily populated with staff.
Oh, I got you. I thought maybe you're looking for more. Okay.
So if we've got three what? Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. If we've got the city engineer and a staff member, that's.
I don't think there
that's it.
should be 3 members of the plat committee that are city employees. Only 2,
Right, and
so that the majority,
if we can fill seats
I
through other
think that's a
sources,
little
I'd
more
be
ethical.
fine with the engineer and staff being staff as opposed to staff being a participant. But we can start with a staff member while we figure out how to populate it and evolve into something different if we need to.
Can we have like 2 APC members share a position so they can take turns? Alternates? Because I don't want to go to 2 meetings a month, but I might be willing to go to 1 if I had to. I mean, I really don't want to do this, but I would if we don't have enough people. but
So
not 2.
remember, we can
Some
also at the
continuity
first
is-
meeting adopt the virtual policy that we adopted as the plan
Oh, we
commission.
can do
So-
this virtually.
Oh, sure.
Oh, well,
But
then
the
I-
rule
I would
is
be
you
happy
can't
to be
attend
involved
4
in
in a row, right? I think that's what
Oh, I
the
didn't know.
resolution is, so you would have to come every now and then.
I can try to swing it.
I'll pull up the parameters of that so you know,
Okay,
but
that would
yes,
be-
this board would also adopt and could hold virtual.
Okay, well, that would be.
And we have to have a quorum present physically.
Correct?
I don't recall having heard that you can't do more than 4 in a row virtually, but I'm not like at risk of having to
I
need to do
just
that.
read it this week for somebody else, so that's why it's fresh on the brain. But yes,
Okay.
you do have to have a quorum present, so at least 3 of you.
Yeah.
Hopefully the city engineer comes to work.
City engineer and Bob. That's 2.
If
I
you're,
think we're
if you're
getting
set on
there.
having a citizen member, how I would probably describe it in the ordinance is not by name, but by title, the city engineer,
Mhm.
at least 1 member of the plan commission,
Right.
and a citizen member. So if you do at least 1, or you can have at least 1 member of, at least 1 citizen. So by putting in those caveats, now you could
Yeah.
have 3 APC members, a citizen member, and the city engineer. Or you could have 2 citizen members, 2 APC members, and
Right.
the city engineer. But this is just the ordinance. This isn't actually committing you to who you have
Right,
to
right.
appoint.
Oh, I
I'm
like
just-
that.
I don't want to amend this ordinance in a year.
Yeah.
Preferably.
At
Well,
least 1
there's no
APC
guarantee on
member,
that.
You do not.
City engineer.
He
and
just
at
happens
least
to have a
1
he
citizen member.
he just would be a subject matter expert in the world of plats because it's all, I don't need to tell you what plats do, but yes. Or his designee.
Well, you said, do we have one? I mean,
There's a city engineer.
officially, yeah. I mean, John Nail, I think, is still serving as city engineer. Yeah, I don't know. No,
He got moved up.
Yeah, we have an opening.
He got moved up to Public Works. Yep.
So we have an assistant city engineer that has been hired and has started. So
So that's the body that will depend upon initially, I guess.
You could even say a city employee. You could broaden it. Yeah, sure, no,
We're locked
right?
in. At least
Or
3 o'clock.
city engineer and or designee. I mean, there's ways to create.
Whatever that is.
I I guess for purposes of helping them draft it, we just need guidance on what you guys would like to see the makeup to be, and then I can help them
I would
craft.
prefer being a little more specific than just a city employee.
Yeah, because you might get,
We want somebody that's, mentally in our ballpark here. So the
Department.
engineer is an easy one. So, engineer or designee, I'm comfortable with as well, because I'm going to trust that the engineer, if he's not able to make it, is not going to send.
They've got
Yeah.
project reviewers over there that probably spend more time actually looking at these things than the engineer does, so
yeah. and
probably
I-
his designee.
I respect certainly your concern about it being any city employee, but you are the body that appoints who that city employee is, so.
Well, this is true.
that's-
The
If
discretion
you don't
will
like
lie
who you
here.
pick, then shame on you.
All right,
I'm just trying to
Good
think of a way to
comeback.
craft it in the language
point taken.
so that you're not pigeonholed. I don't want you guys to find yourself in a month unable to do what you're wanting to do, and we still don't have a plat committee.
Okay,
Like I said, I would love to be involved. It's just that 11 o'clock, it'd be tricky for me. I mean, if I can do virtual, fantastic, but I would just have to talk to my employer about it as well, so.
Can you do it at noon? Everybody just eat their lunch when they're doing it?
I don't take a lunch hour anyway, so I could do that.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I'm down in 86 now.
Well, if it's virtual, you got more flexibility.
Yeah, virtual would be fine.
but if you have to show up, whatever the interval is, then you got to be able to plan for that.
Which takes me about 20 minutes, so.
They're not here, so,
Andre,
yeah.
I'm sure that Andre will. He told me he said yes to too many things and he has to learn to say no.
I think we have some influence with Matt's employer. Can do that.
so at least one ABC member.
Okay.
Have we provided
so here's the
sufficient
param-
input for tonight?
Here's the parameters. A member may not attend more than 50% of the meetings in a calendar year by electronic means of communication, unless it's due to military service, illness, death,
That's
something.
unfortunate.
A member may attend 2 consecutive meetings by electronics communications. A member must attend at least 1 meeting in person between sets of meetings that the member attends by electronic communication. So you can't attend less than 50%, and you can't
Back to back.
do back. No, you can do back-to-back, but then you'd have to be present,
The third,
and then you could do 2 more.
yeah.
As long as it's not more than 50%. Blame the state. I did not
Oh,
write this. This is
hey,
the state
you're
of
fine.
Indiana.
They got too many people writing these things.
Bureaucrats. The bane of our existence.
Yeah, accelerate technology.
Do you have sufficient input? Did you get what you're looking for from us for tonight?
What did we decide? At least 2 APC members.
At least one
Oh, at least
gives
one
us
APC
flexibility.
member, At least one citizen member
And at least one city employee, however you mix that
and one employee.
year to year is
If you want to see more specificity, you could say city employee from the engineering department. I mean, you are that concerned, but you are.
But since we appoint that person.
That was her point, rebutting my concern. So,
This- Oh, I'm sorry. The citizen can be township or city, either, doesn't matter.
There's no restrictions on political affiliation or where they live.
They live in Noblesville.
They could live in Noblesville. There's nothing that says that they have to.
Wow.
I don't know that you'd want to do that to Westfield, but
necessarily
you
want that.
could.
that could be an interesting dynamic, couldn't it?
Kind of a quick clarification question. When are we looking to start up the plat committee?
Pam, are you still
Do you
on
want me
here?
to answer that, Kevin?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Oh, you're still here.
So if we get the UDO amendment approved at council next week and then the rules subsequently adopted, these will apply to filings that are filed at our next deadline, which is the end of this month. Actually, I believe it's July 1st. So any primary plats and overall development plans that are submitted on July 1st would be the first round that would go to the plat committee. So realistically, that They would be going to Technical Advisory Committee July 19th. So the soonest they would probably be ready for approval would be late August. So we would want the Plat Committee established probably by mid-August.
One other thing that just popped to mind here, is there anything that we have to do to add more columns or rows, whatever it is, to the spreadsheet of all of the dates and get it out there published? Is that in the
Yes,
works as
we
well?
will be doing, yep, we will be doing that as well. I don't believe we'll need to change the Plan Commission calendar since the workshop meeting will just replace the second Plan Commission meeting,
Right.
but we will need to create a calendar for the Plat Committee.
Yeah, that's all I was thinking about, was we need whatever way you organize that, columns, rows, for the filing deadline and the meeting date. There's, I presume, some requirement that that be out on our website and notice to whoever in a certain amount of time to make sure they know to plan for this. But that should work easily with mid-August. So, okay.
So
Yeah, and just to follow that up, just for, I guess, make sure this is in everybody's head, we do have a couple, I think at least one overall development plan on our continued items, and we did have one, I think, submitted for our most recent filing deadline that will still follow the current process. So even though we'll be adopting these new rules in the UDO and these new rules of procedure, previously submitted items will still need to follow the process that was in place when they were submitted. So you will still hear primary plats and overall development plans at your meeting next month, and you may have some come back for approval at later dates, so as they filter off.
No problem.
All right, so quick summary, a 5-member committee consisting of at least one Plan Commission member, at least one citizen member, and at least one city employee. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
But not to exceed 2 city employees.
But not to exceed 2. Got it.
Us inmates have to continue to run this asylum. Not you guys. All right, I think we've done what we've been called to do here tonight. Golly, it's after 10 now. So we are down to adjournment.
Motion.
I hope,
Motion.
please.
Second.
Who motioned that? I did. We'll give Jenny credit. Kelleher, motion. McCarty, second. It's 10:07. Staff need to call the roll since we have a virtual attendee.
Yes, I think so. All right, Mr. Schmitz.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Boljeric has left
Yeah, she had to bail her.
meeting. Ms. Berkman.
Yes.
Mr. Horke.
Yes.
Mr. Johns.
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher.
Yes.
Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
10:08.